crown hits the floor at the start, and another one hits the floor at the end, and a bunch of bodies hit the floor along with it. And not all the bodies are people. That's right. This war arguably started before this episode, if not well before, but this is the first time that the dragons danced. The red dragon and the gold. This one is called. It's a bit of a play on the blacks and the greens that represent their factions. You know, the greens are represented by a green dragon. Vhagar's the biggest one. The blacks don't have a big black dragon, though. So, yeah, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It just doesn't always line up this well. This episode is interesting because, for many reasons, but before it aired, we thought it was called A Dance of Dragons. For some reason, that title was released and posted on IMDb. We've been going the whole season expecting that. Whatever. This is not the actual title, but it certainly does describe it. Because the dragons did dance, and it's a dance of dragons, not the dance of dragons, because there's quite a bit of dancing left. And as spectacular as episode 4 of season 2 is, boy, they set the bar high for future dragon dancing. It's already one of the most production-intensive dragon scenes of all time in any media, right? So just let that sit with you as you're considering the episode. It isn't just a feat, a big moment of the story, a huge pivotal change, the moment when the action starts, the dragons finally get in the war. But it's also a pretty watermark moment in television, right? But sticking to the story for now and continuing with my intro spiel, leadership is a big theme today. The lack of direction in the Black Council and the Riverlands is a major plot thread, while a crisis of leadership impacts the Greens as well. Aemond and Cole have a plan, but their goals aren't perfectly aligned, not to mention their view of King Aegon, which maybe is more in alignment. They want to keep him out of it. Cole circumvents him, Aemond embarrasses him, and his mother tells him directly that the best thing he can do is nothing at all, which of course kind of goads him into proving them, well, he proves them exactly right. Cole's plan was pretty clever, actually. He's certainly one step ahead of Rhaenyra, who thought her side would have the element of surprise, but neither of them really realized what they were unleashing. They had an idea, a picture, an imagination. And Cole, in particular, this is a man with plenty of experience in war, but only wars of men. When he fell unconscious early in the battle, he awoke into a new world. His brutal treatment of the Crownlands houses, especially Duskendale, that played out over weeks, but it's quickly overshadowed by one afternoon of dragon warfare. It was far more destructive and devastating and chaotic, and it was too much for even him, an experienced warrior, a brutal guy like this. It really says a lot. So no one's plans are going according to plan. The battle, but we've got it all. The battle details, the confusion, the chaos, the dream details, the horror, the harrowing, the dragons, the drinking, the blacks, the green, the red, and the gold. All that and more on this episode of History of Westeros podcast. Hello and welcome, everybody. What a great time it is to be discussing House of the Dragon. What an amazing episode that was. Whether you loved it or maybe it didn't quite have lived up to your expectations, it certainly was spectacular, and we're glad to be talking about it here with you all. Our spoiler-free breakdowns, yes, this is a spoiler-free breakdown, as all of our Monday episodes are, every 6 o'clock Eastern on Mondays, and we do deep dives on many Wednesdays. That's 7, Saturdays at 3. The Saturday episodes are full of spoilers, preview stuff from the trailers, stuff from casting notes, stuff from the books, but never leaks. And we do have game streams at 6 o'clock on Fridays over on twitch.tv, History of Westeros. I've got my cool Dance of the Dragons shirt designed by Ashea. You can't see the back, but you can see the dragons on the front, and the back actually has tour dates, which has all the battles for where Dance of the Dragons is. It's slightly spoilery, actually. But
you can get them at our Threadless shop at the historyofwesteros.com site.
That's right. Why wait? Get one now. So, yeah, like I said, episode title changed on us, or maybe that was never really the title in the first place. Not sure what happened there. Maybe we'll figure that out later, but not very important. I want to start, as we often do, with our impressions and see what we thought. Sean, you first. What did you think of the episode? Hit us.
I loved it. I think last week I said that was my favorite episode. Now this is my favorite episode. A lot of times there's like a recency bias, but the thing is that I know there's like this, even talking to other people, a lot of people have this mentality like, come on, get on with it. I want to see the dragons fight. I get there's this slice of the population that wants action and adventure and dragons and all this kind of stuff. And it's not like I don't want that. But a lot of times that action-y stuff is handled in ways that made me kind of roll my eyes. I don't buy it. Some of the physics are off or whatever. And B, I don't care about the action at all if I don't care about the characters involved, the implications of the action and so on. And you get that from conversation, character development, nuance. And this episode had both. I don't feel like they sacrificed one for the other. I feel like there was just as much of these sort of like meaningful, tough, nuanced conversations between characters as there are in other episodes. They still had that here. They had some other quasi-fantasy elements that weren't necessarily action-y with Daemon's dream, the haunting of Harrenhal and stuff like that. But also they had action, and the most spectacular action that maybe has ever been on TV. I mean, I've said a couple times that they really make the dragons feel real, and they were really doing that here. And my biggest complaint, that when I'm stretching for something to complain about, it's maybe I'm thinking about the timing of how Vhagar could have got on the other side of the castle and come up just right. If Rhaenys can't see Vhagar, how can Vhagar see her coming? Like, how did the timing? Maybe it's a little luck. But again, I feel like I'm nitpicking one element of this massive action scene. Overall, I was impressed, and I have a take on almost every freaking scene in the whole show. I can't wait to talk about it. I thought it was so awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I've got all the different takes to cue you up and get your responses on, but let's hear what Ashaya thought.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it as well. It was my favorite episode of the season so far. I'm also, like you, Sean, action isn't what I'm in it for, but when it comes to action, this was one spectacular action, but two really meaningful action and in the action moments, I felt that there were strong character beats where like with Aegon, like the fact that he was involved in this fight in the first place was like just weighted heavy with the sadness of the fact that he shouldn't have been there, with Rhaenys choosing to turn back and kind of sacrifice herself. I felt like the action had so much weight to it. So it wasn't, I loved it in that respect. And I'll say we watched the episode early, as we often do. And I was so excited that I organized a whole watch party with 20 people this weekend, because I was like, this is the episode for it. Like, this is spectacular. I need to watch this with as many people as I can.
I feel the need to clarify, I'm not part of that I didn't see it early, so I'm still processing. Like 5 minutes ago, I was still like writing notes down to talk about here. So.
Yeah, to add to what y'all said, I don't have a whole lot of different things to say. I really loved it too. It was a fantastic episode. I had high expectations and I was not disappointed. I agree with you, Sean, about how they still had a lot of character work in there, and I agree with you, Shay, how that character work came out during the battle. Like, Aemond's personality was there. Rhaenys' personality was there. Aegon's personality was there. All the chip on his shoulder, all his feeling of worthlessness, all his, like trying to make himself prove that he's worthy of being the king. And Gwaine Hightower arguing with Cole on the ground. Cole, like, realizing it's all going wrong and his great plan is falling apart for a reason that's out of his control, and what can he do about it? Yeah, you just felt all that. It was... And I felt for the soldiers, like, just those guys, like, what are they doing? Like, they it's like helpless, like they're caught between a rook and a hard place. Hey, yeah, that's right. So, yeah, we'll discuss, like the episode itself, we'll discuss things in the order they played out. So we'll start with Harrenhal and then move our way on to the Battle of Rick's Rest itself. Yeah, it's funny. We always do our voting for character for the best actor of each episode, and when I was writing our poll, which is always in our Facebook group, by the way, and I put the poll up this time, I was thinking to myself, someone besides Emma Darcy has a chance to win this time. This is the first time they weren't like the really prominent person there. They're always center stage, but a little off to the side, still pretty prominent, but not as prominent as usual. I was like, yeah, you're, for once, Emma's like somewhat secondary, while still being a main character, of course.
Rhaenys, I think if you had to name a main character this episode, it was Rhaenys, and so just screen time might give a little bias to her as far as picking my favorite. But
yeah, and that's that is how the poll is going. It's still in progress right now, but Rhaenys is winning. Go ahead.
I'll say a slight aside to this, but she has been growing as my favorite character overall. Her and Rhaenyra both this season, especially because I feel like they've been the ones really trying to find peace, trying to avoid the tragedy that's coming. And I liked her quite a bit the first season too, but I was like marred by when she blew up through the dragon pit. And I'm like, oh, she just killed a bunch of innocent people. And it's like the one bad thing she did, but that didn't even happen in the books, I know now.
Right.
So it makes me a little easier to like dismiss that. I don't know if it's fair for me to do that or not, trying to cherry picking show parts and book parts for what I
she's
like
an entirely different character in the book, Sean. She has black hair, totally different.
Yeah.
No, actually, no, she's mostly the same, actually. But anyway, well, that's the topic for another time. Stannis Baratheon sends a super chat, says, how has Ashaya's opinion of Daemon as a literary character changed from the world of Ice and Fire, Fire and Blood, now Hot D? I know before Fire and Blood, you didn't think much of him at all. I forgot you had that opinion, so I'm curious what you have to say here, Ashaya.
I do think he has a lot more depth than he's written with in Fire and Blood. I think if you'd asked me this at some point last season in season 1, I would have said I'd warmed up to him in some respects, and I found I found some stuff to relate to him on and all that. But at this point in the season, frankly, it's gone the other way. It's swung back in the other direction, and that I find him less likable than ever. He's suggesting some pretty awful things to little Oscar Tully. He's like clearly tempted by the idea of abusing Rhaenyra in that moment in the beginning of the season, and he holds himself back in that moment and just leaves. But like you the weight of him having choked her in season 1 is there. And I don't know, personally, I warmed and then cooled off on him.
To be fair, I think what they're asking, maybe I'm wrong, is they thought that your opinion was that he was kind of one-dimensional. Like from
he was.
Whether you
now
like him or
he's
dislike
not.
him, you have that gives him more dimension, dislike or like. So that's
sometimes,
cool. Yeah.
Sometimes you got to separate the difference between, do you like the character of this character versus do you like the entertainment of this character?
Right.
I think he's a good character. I think he's an interesting character, and I like seeing what he's going to do, which is more than I could say for Fire and Blood.
But you think he has a lot of moral, like he's obviously got moral issues, character flaws,
but the thing is,
etc.
I think Aemond has moral issues, but I like Aemond a hell of a lot more than I like Daemon, and that's my bias there. I don't know what to say about that, but I just feel that
I think I like Daemon more than Aemond, but let's save that actually, because we have a Daemon parallel conversation coming up really shortly here. This will give us an opportunity to talk about that.
I will say that I was thinking about comparing Aegon to Daemon.
Yeah. And
that because I think there's this, it's easy at this moment to kind of feel bad for Aegon. But don't forget, he's a rapist. He didn't give a crap about his kids until after he became king. Like, there's all kinds of things in this moment. Oh, that's kind of sad, but I have a hard time feeling pity for him, but I bring this up because I feel kind of that way about Daemon too. Like, whatever struggles he might have, I don't think. But the thing is that Aegon's mistake doesn't make it okay, but it's a little easier. You know, if I have to compare and contrast them, it's easier for me to forgive a mistake that Aegon has made as a teenager than Daemon has made as an adult.
Sure,
does that make sense?
Absolutely. So we start at Harrenhal. It's funny that we start at Harrenhal, but it's really the Red Keep because it's a dream in Harrenhal of the Red Keep. Matt Smith said this is the very first thing they filmed in season 2 because Millie Alcock had somewhere else to be. You know, like, I can't be here, y'all. I got other stuff to do, right? You know, it's a scene we've been seeing since the first trailers. Daemon in night clothes entering this empty throne room, except we don't see the Millie Alcock on the throne wearing her crown in the trailers, of course. This is a throwback. It's in a complete reversal of one of the very first scenes of the show, Daemon's very first scene. Not Rhaenyra's very first scene, but one of her first scenes. She comes into the throne room and he's sitting on the throne. This time he comes into the throne and it's her. And in both of those scenes, they speak High Valyrian to each other. And there's a little bit of a talk and then they switch to Common. And here there's accusations and guilt. Even in the dream, Daemon is fighting back. Like he's in both of his dreams, the one he had last episode of this one, he's not accepting what his subconscious seems to be telling him. He's like, And it's similar. It's more about what he did to this girl, like grooming her for rule, but with his control and etc. And you might have missed it at the time because it was episode 1. You know, we're not sure what's happening yet. But, and this isn't, you know, grooming in the sense that an old man is trying to have sex with a younger woman. This is about power. Like that's.
Although there was that too.
There was that too, but that's secondary here. If it was just that, I don't think he would care. I think he wouldn't be interested in her like that.
I think if she was older than him and she had the power dynamic, he would be interested in her. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it would be harder for him to manipulate her because she wouldn't be young. But still, yeah, it's the sexual intent is very low on the list here. So we've gotten some translations. This is pretty sweet. David Peterson put the translations of what was being said there because it's not made clear what's being said. And it's been said that Targaryens are closer to gods than to men. And he's walking closer. He doesn't understand what she's saying. In my eyes, you were a god, Daemon Targaryen, the prince of the city, the lord of Fleabottom. Still can't understand. I was an innocent. You exploited me and abandoned me. You sullied my name at court. You empowered my rivals. You tried to make my ruin. You put me on that throne, and you love me, and you hate me for it. You created me, Daemon, yet you are now set on destroying me. So, yeah, like that's pretty straightforward once you hear those translations, right? It's very much a building on what we had at the Harrenhal scene last episode. So there's guilt.
There's a little bit of a parallel there, too, to when Aemond is speaking to Aegon, and Aegon doesn't fully understand. He doesn't know what to say back. He's kind of, I think Daemon understands High Valyrian. It's a different point being made, but it still is this sort of parallel. Someone's sort of being put in their place.
Yes.
With High Valyrian.
Yes, and I totally agree. That is a very similar message here, and High Valyrian is just a big part of this episode in general. The speaking of it comes up a lot, and it's it's even part of the character building for the episode. You have them using Valyrian in combat, and that is part of the character work, setting that all up. So it's even a little smaller clue here, or hint, or another parallel. In that first scene of season 1, he puts a necklace around her, gives her a Valyrian steel necklace, and says, now we both own a part of our heritage. He's referring to Dark Sister. In this scene, he cuts her neck off with Dark Sister instead of putting a necklace on it. And then the crown hits the ground and clatters. That's where we have that trailer scene that we've seen a bunch of times. It's a bit of an inverse to him placing it on her head, which he refers to when he's arguing with her before he leaves for Harrenhal. But it's perhaps even more so of a parallel of his brother dropping the crown right at the foot of the throne as he's trying to mount it that last time, which he picks back up for him and puts it on his head. So there's just all this like duality is present here, both sides of it. Daemon being at his best and at his worst. The bad stuff is more focused on, but the parallels to when he's been a good guy, sort of, or behaving better in these things, that's there too. It's shadowed, but it's really well done, I think, and then it continues by merging with reality. But hold off here. Let's see what you have to say about this so far, Sean.
A couple thoughts. One is, I remember when the trailers were first released months ago, and we were, trying to pick them apart, and there were a couple images that looked like the throne room, but we couldn't quite make sense of what was going on, and we kind of decided it must be some sort of dream sequence.
Yeah.
A little more clear that is what was going on, why it was hard for us to decipher those trailers imagery. Also, I think this is the third or fourth time Daemon's beheaded someone. When that scene in the beginning, I think it was also season 1, episode 1, when he took the city watch and just without trial or anything, just rounded up whoever he thought was a criminal, and that scene ended with him beheading someone that was accused of murder.
That's true.
And then he beheaded the Crab King along with his arm. He got the head and shoulder all together.
Vaemond Velaryon, yeah.
Yeah, Vaemond Velaryon. And so now it's a dream, but maybe he dreams about it because he does it so much.
And he's somewhat responsible, if not mostly responsible, for the beheading of young Jaehaerys, too. Because he ordered a head. He was like, give me the head. So that was his command, bring me the head.
Exactly, yeah.
Got to decapitate him for that, yeah. So the dream starts to merge with reality as he's waking up, which seems to be something they build on here. The more into the episode we get, the harder it is to tell for him what's dream and what's reality, and somewhat for us as well. So Millie Alcock's head is saying there's a raven, and he wakes up, there's blood on his hand, and he's looking at the blood, and of course that's like one of the more obvious symbols, literary symbolism of your hands are bloody, that means you're guilty, right? So of course it's only one hand, but still. And it's interesting too, because his hand didn't get bloody during the dream. He didn't do anything to touch, but he cuts her head off very cleanly and smoothly, and never touches any blood. So it's very much about the guilt, I think, the symbolism there. But as he's looking at his hand, the blood fades. It's so cool. He's like, where did that blood go? It's just gone. And
also really interesting there. Remember last episode, he had barred the door to his room shut with 2 swords.
Yeah.
But this episode, he's waking up to people in his room talking about a raven and pulled the curtain aside.
Yeah.
So, like, was it a dream for those swords to be barring the door?
No,
So
I think he just has been there several weeks now, and it would be silly for him to still think they're going to kill him. Else, like, if they were going to kill him by now, they could have done it in 100 different ways, and they haven't. So I think he's just like, all right, you know,
more relaxed and or more out of it. Or
surely
whatever.
he's eaten by now, you know. Right? He's like, no, I'm still worried you're going to poison me, you know.
Yeah, he certainly isn't worried about being fed poison. He just drank that drink from Alys Rivers right away.
So as Simon leads him to the hall to speak with young Oscar Tully, he sees a black goat, which is like, is that really there? And Sarah Hess teased before the season that there would be a haunted goat. And I guess there it is. There's a haunted goat. And yeah, is that...
Makes me think we're going to see it again.
Yeah, I think we might see it again. You're right.
By the way, one thought I had when they first showed this is it's just another indication of the sort of rundownness of Harrenhal. This isn't like a really royal castle that's got its stuff together, you know. But then later on, they show 3 dogs laying there. Have you guys seen this?
Of course.
This it's a parallel to people who get Harrenhal in the future, right? That's
Maybe.
Vargo Hope.
Yeah, we have a section on it in the document.
Yeah,
we've got a bar.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I didn't mean to jump ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so in world, the black goat is associated with Qohor, though it's might be the meaning here, because that is the sigil to the Brave Companions, which would be connected to Vargo Hoat if it's supposed to represent future sigils at Harrenhal. But black goats are an old piece of symbolism in literary world, which they represent the unseen elements of life, the need to confront one's fears or unresolved issues. It's a bullseye for what Daemon is dealing with. So it doesn't have to be one thing, but it's definitely that, among probably other things too. So he meets a very nervous Oscar Tully, grandson of Grover. It's a bit of a callback to Hoster Tully, also infirm at the start of the War of the Five Kings, but it's mostly a service level similarity because not much else is similar here. Edmure was an adult, and he was allowed to give orders in Hoster's name, which this kid is not. He's also too young to do it, even if he did have permission, which he doesn't. So Daemon's rude to him, but he's right that what's the point of you even coming here if you have no authority to give any commands at all? It was kind of a waste of time from his perspective.
I think he wanted to meet Daemon.
He's like, I want to meet the king.
Yeah,
He's like, yeah, he may have. That may have been all there is to it, you know? He's like, oh, I just wanted to meet you, you know? Like, you're the king. I'm coming to hang out and meet you, you know? It seems like the thing to do, you know?
Yeah, he's a famous fighter and a dragon rider. If I was a young teen boy, I would want to meet Daemon Targaryen.
Yeah, I probably would too. It's a good point. Remember that Aegon... Go ahead.
I did think it was interesting how this played out because did Daemon really think he's like, well, you need to go, murder your grandfather so you can take charge? Did Daemon really think this kid was going to do that?
No,
but
I don't
at the
think
same
so.
time, did this kid think that Daemon's going to be like, oh, well, we'll just wait for him to get better? Like, I don't think anyone was thinking realistically about how this was going.
Yeah.
And, maybe Daemon had this hope because the fact is, Daemon doesn't really quite have the authority to do what he's doing right now. He's just doing it. This kid maybe could have said, all right, fine. Yeah, we'll do it. Fly me back on your dragon and the armies will follow you. I promise. Like he maybe could have taken charge. Whether he should have, I don't know. But I could see what Daemon's hope was,
Yeah. And of course, I agree with you. He wasn't really being serious with his suggestion he kill his dad. He's just like, okay, this is all a waste. So he's just being snarky because he immediately realizes this whole thing has been a waste of time. And
that scene, I want to give credit to the direction and framing of that scene. It was so perfect the way Daemon was just too close to him and sat in the seat that he had been sitting in. And the kid's sword was a little too big. He had to stumble back into his chair. It was like, It was perfectly portrayed.
And when Daemon declares the Riverlands are leaderless, like the fish without a head, he's kind of right. And this is reflected elsewhere by other people's takes elsewhere in the story or elsewhere in Westeros. Like Lord Massey says the Riverlands are deeply entangled, like the end of a Lesseni orgy. And Aemond says Harrenhal is a useful morass. And Larys says it is beyond his faculties and jokes that it's more crippled than he is. So, and Sir Simon, of course, is like, repair, you say? Like, what are you gonna do here? Like, yeah, he's a little confused there. So, real quick side note, they made some changes to the Muppet Tully family tree here. We guess that the main reason is to avoid using the name Kermit Tully in the show, but we'll talk about that separately. It's a part of the book to show changes thing that we'll do in one single episode after the season. Aemond and Daemon, meaning the dream here. He goes back to sleep, has another dream similar to his first night where he sees feet at the door and sound of marching. That's kind of a rehash there, and it's quite a lot of noise. He again follows and sees a Valyrian figure in black with long hair. And my first instinct was, is that his brother? Is that Viserys? And then as it goes a little farther on, you're like, oh, that looks like Aemond, the way he's stalking with his arms held wide outside of his body. And then when you get even closer, you can see the strap of the eye patch, which was not there before. Which is like, okay, that's definitely Aemond. But then he turns around and it's Daemon wearing his clothes. And it's like, whoa, that's pretty cool. It's kind of a horror movie trope to do that, but it was done really well. Like, it's not a... When I say trope, I don't mean bad thing. There's a reason tropes are used a lot because they work, you know?
I think the eye patch strap is there the whole time.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. Sure? I have a picture of it here, and it's here in this shot.
Shot when he walks down the hall?
Yeah.
You're muted, Aziz.
Oh, even the first shot when he first sees him when he's walking down the hall? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was... I didn't take note quite of the eye patch one or the other, but I felt like the gate was Aemond. It seemed pretty clearly off the bat to me. There might have been a flash of a moment when I thought it might be Viserys or some other person, but I bet they had Ewan, what's his name?
Ewan Mitchell.
Ewan Mitchell.
Yeah.
Ewan Mitchell. Yeah, might have been the actor that was pacing there. You know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would think so. I would agree. Yeah. So either way, strap or not, it's the moment hits really hard, and the parallels to Daemon and Aemond are really powerful. Obviously, Daemon's being shown that he might not like seeing how similar he is to his nephew. This is a younger him. He may not like that, and Aemond may not like being seen as an older or younger version of Daemon. But it's true. Like, they're not identical. There's obviously many differences.
I think Aemond likes it. Daemon doesn't.
Aemond might like it. Yeah, because he's being compared to a guy who's already a veteran and has risen high and is a dragon rider that's actually proven himself.
Whereas Daemon's dealing with the younger, more beautiful queen type beat. You know what I mean?
That's true. An upstart who has a bigger dragon, sure, but what has he actually done? You know, besides kill a smaller dragon. After this episode, he's got a bigger claim to fame. But prior to, still doesn't have Daemon's resume probably, but he's gotten closer, it's for sure. So yeah, like, for example, if we look at just their power dynamics of the brother, Daemon undermined Viserys as kind of like he's undermining Rhaenyra, but he never like went directly against him. I'd say there's more loyalty. Like, Daemon would stand up for his brother. If anyone tried to attack Viserys, Daemon would jump in front of them and fight them. I don't know if Aemon would do that for Aegon. Like, because Aegon was mean to him. He bullied him. Viserys didn't bully Daemon. So like their dynamic has been different since they were children.
That is a similarity, is that they both feel like they should be king.
Yes,
but
that
I think
is a similarity.
Aemond maybe has earned it a little bit more. Like, he's done what he's supposed to do. He just happens to be the younger brother. Daemon has been petulant because he's the younger brother, right?
Yeah.
And so, that said, I think you're right, and we maybe even kind of saw that here. That not only would Aemond not step in to protect Aegon like Daemon would have done for Viserys, Aemond might purposefully put Aegon in harm's way and stand back and watch it play out.
Yeah, and I don't think Daemon would have done that particular thing, which is not necessarily a defense of Daemon, but more of like showing the ways that these two are different in some ways, even though they do have a lot in common. Let's talk about Alys Rivers. She's super cool, very interesting character. One of the characters we've been most looking forward to because her story is so deeply personal, meaning it plays out on a one-to-one level, which is the kind of thing the maesters and historians are not going to have any idea about. And she's a bastard and a woman and a possible practitioner of magic, also things they have no idea about. So this is a character that is most going to be misrepresented in the histories, thus the one that has amongst the most potential to be made into something interesting and to drawn out and make, which is already quite interesting just from the bits in the book. But there's so much room to make her more. And it's a great start to that. We joked about her accent, having only heard, 5 words from the one line. It's it's very Scottish. I mean, she is Scottish.
I still think there is a tone to her voice that she is doing some muted thing that gives some words a quality that is not your standard Scottish accent.
I tend to agree, but if you hear her in interviews, it's pretty similar.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I still like when she said like rivers, like there was just certain words she said that sounded off to me. And I feel that I've seen other people talk about it on Twitter and whatnot. So I'm curious if anyone agrees.
We'll get more clarification later, probably. She might say
Scottish, to be clear. And I knew it was Scottish at the time. I'm saying that it just has a certain tone to it. Like she is slightly.
Right. I'm not disagreeing with you that you weren't saying you've been saying it's Scottish all along. I'm just saying it was. Hearing her speak in lots of the Scottish came out in a lot of places. I'm not disagreeing with her that she didn't maybe put some other stuff in there, but having heard her interviews, I'm not convinced of that either. I think she'll tell us. I think she'll tell us eventually.
It makes her seem like she's not from around.
Because no one has that accent in Westeros. Yeah. Either way, that's a unique accent for Westeros. Yeah, because the other Scottish actors that we've had didn't sound like this. They didn't sound like. The accent was thicker. Like Graham McTavish has a thicker Scottish accent that he allows to come through, and it fits. Here, though, yeah, she sounds more otherworldly in a way that sounds almost normal to Americans, which is kind of neat, right?
Even saying someone has a Scottish accent, I'm not an expert necessarily on Scottish accents, but there's probably multiple variations of Scottish accents.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Where Scotland you're from. Just London, even London has multiple different accents. Or, think of, I don't know, big New York versus Boston versus, an American accent has a huge range.
Yeah, people say Southern accent, but like anyone who lives in the South is like, well, which one?
yeah. There's a big difference between Alabama and Florida.
Yeah,
and
or
Texas
like Savannah, where they talk like, hey, y'all. No,
yeah, even within
black
Georgia,
molasses, y'all. Yeah, like it's so different. Yeah, there's a lot of different ones. Anyway, so yes, of course, those variations also exist in every country, every region. So we'll learn more about that and let you guys know. But if you have information on that, certainly let us in on that. So it's a great scene. Daemon just doesn't know what to do with her. He's a little back-footed because he's used to people just kind of wilting under his authority and his reputation. And she is kind of above him in a way. She's like one step ahead of him the whole way, if not 3 steps ahead. And he just doesn't. He's like, well, you're weird. Like he's not sure what to say. It's awesome. Like and that's one of the things that puts him off is she's not treating him like royalty. She's just treating him like some guy, like who's having sleeping problems. Like he treats her like just anyone else. And to him, that's unusual. Like no one treats me like a normal person. What's going on here? Everyone's like scared of me. She's not scared of me. Should I be scared of her? I don't know. It's like he's like all these thoughts, but he's also just sleepy and confused and has been sleepy and confused for a while now. So that's also, she knows she's got the edge on him there is that he's a sleepy guy that's like disoriented, so she can use that to her advantage, and she does.
Not just sleepy, by the way, haunted,
yes.
Discombobulated.
Yeah.
It's however aware she is of his state, it seems like he's encountering her at these moments of weakness, abnormality, whatever,
Really good dialogue here. She says, "You are Alys Rivers, a bastard. Not so bad once you get to know me," which is meant as a joke, but it's also true. Like bastards get treated badly, and people assume that bastards are like petty and jealous and ruled by their passions because that's how they were created. It's very silly, but that's how
not
they
like
believe.
Daemon.
Yeah,
not like all these trueborn people who aren't ruled by their passions.
No, he's very he's just ice cold and stoic all the time, right? Yeah. So she knows what's going on so much. She's like, I've seen the look of bad sleep before. It's such a common experience at Harrenhal anyway. It's going to be the first thing she thinks of. And she blames it on the curse of Black Heron, points out the cut down weirwood groves, and that's all book canon for them, basically. And she even says his bed is made from one of those trees, which is, that's a big one. And you could see how that fits into prior A Song of Ice and Fire lore with weirwood items sometimes being associated with dreams. Like Theon also had powerful dreams while sleeping in Ned and Kat's bed, which isn't stated to be a weirwood bed, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. It would explain a lot. And Jaime has a weirwood dream when he puts his head on a stump, So these things happen, right? Not to mention Bran at the center of all the weirwood stuff, being fed weirwood paste, possibly Jojen paste, possibly that's the same thing, of which there are echoes here. She has weirwood leaves on her apron. She speaks of dead spirits in the weirwoods that were cut down. Pretty consistent with book canon on that. She talks about, the ghosts and being in Harrenhal. I mean, the ghosts, if we're looking at it from their perspective, the ghosts might dislike Targaryens, given Aegon and Balerion, but if she calls herself a barn owl, which is is that meant to just be silly, or is she like a skin changer? Is that what she's saying here? So
sometimes you can, when the truth is something really fantastic, you could just tell people and they don't believe you.
Yeah. So that was my first thought there. And the behind the scenes suggests she might be way older than she looks, which you're already supposed to not be able to tell how old she is by looking. That's like the way she's described in the books. It's like that woman could be in her 20s, that woman could be in her 50s. I don't really know. But it's hinted at that she might be even older than that. She's not in her 20s. That's definitely wrong. but the point is she could pass for that. Now, book version doesn't know, but here it suggested she might be even centuries old, which would mean she lived somewhere else before, because Harrenhal is 130 years old. It is not centuries plural old. Even if you count the construction phase, it's 170 years old from the day it started construction. So anyway, but the red coloring of this concoction that she makes for Daemon's dreams, that's the same color it would be if it was weirwood paste. So they were being very intentional there. And then she licks her fingers, the red off of there. That gives me serious Euron vibes when Euron is licking up that extra shade of the evening when his brother spits it back out onto his face. And he's like, oh, we don't want to waste that. It's like, yeah. So really cool. Yeah. And you're right, Sean. He's just like, okay, I guess I'll drink this, she got so far ahead of him in their conversation. He was back-footed so much, and clearly he's established some level of trust there, and he does want the sleep really badly. He's like, yeah, I really do need sleep.
I have a few thoughts that are maybe approaching tinfoil territory, but I'm half joking, but half wondering what happened to that old maester. He disappeared in the night. He wasn't fitting in. Is she feeding him? Is she using his blood for this pace? But slightly more serious thought is, how aware or trusting or whatever is Simon Strong of Alys Rivers?
We don't know yet.
Do you think Simon understands that Daemon is having visions and not sleeping well? Does he know that it's a weirwood bed? Has Simon slept in that bed? Did he have visions?
I have those same questions.
Could he know, or could Alys have told him, or trust what Alys tells him if they have had some vision? Because he seemed so calm and prepared when Daemon showed up. Did he know that was coming somehow? Maybe it's just a prediction you can make. The lords are at war. We're in a key spot. Someone's coming here.
Yeah, just like she susses out his problems with Rhaenyra. You didn't send a raven back, so there must be a quarrel going on here. Yeah, kind of like that.
So some of it, there's some explanation for, but I can't help but wonder, they're featuring her character. She seems to have reign. She walks through the corridors. She's up at night. It's not like Simon doesn't know who she is.
Well, here's my question for you, Sean.
Belong,
she didn't eat with them. I think she is at least looked at as second class, or they just thought it would raise questions with Daemon. Maybe when Daemon's not there, she eats at table with them. But to me, that indicates that she is not warmly, fondly loved by the fellow Strongs, exactly, and kept close.
She might be accepted almost as a maester, but she doesn't have a chain, so it's not official. And she might have done some valuable work and have some healing properties and knowledge, but still she's a bastard. There's all kinds of reasons why they might limit her ability to sit with the boys,
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean that they don't listen or trust or respect her. And so I wonder how much they know what she knows. That she seems to have this inside take on Daemon. Has she shared that with them? Do they have, anyway, we'll see how it plays out. I'm very curious.
Yeah, those are very good questions. And not particularly questions that are given to us in the book, answers that are given. So I'm I don't mean that like I wonder too. No, I really do wonder too. There aren't answers from the books there, so we'll see what the show does. Now, super chat from Anthony DePalma, who says, fellow Westorian Diana Dunlap. Hey, Diana. And I talked earlier about how Alys and Melisandre use opposing gods to deliver visions. Alys equals Jojen Pace, Mel equals R'hllor. Yeah, that's really cool. That fits into our long-standing theory of magical overlap, which is that different forms of magic allow you, or sources of magic allow you to tap into the same powers, whether it's the prophecy powers that maybe you are referring to here that come from, yes, fire from R'hllor, they gaze into the flames, or they have dragon dreams if they have this Targaryen blood, maybe that's fire in their blood already. Yeah, and Alys, the complementary or perhaps opposing ice magic versus fire magic here is being perhaps explored. I love that concept.
Or blood magic.
Sure.
Alys is maybe feeding Daemon blood, whereas Melisandre was drawing blood, leeching blood away from her magic. But, yeah.
That's cool. That's a good interpretation. Yeah, the leeches, that's a good way to think of it, yeah. Sandy Hartcorn says, Helena had an owl in her drawings near a drawing of Harrenhal. I did see people pointing to that on Twitter. I saw it maybe just like 30 minutes before this episode went live, so I have not had a chance to think about that, and I need to go look back at Helena's drawings again. Need to refer to those just about every time. That should be a standard thing on my list of things to do. After every episode,
we said no leaks.
Look at Helena's drawings.
No spoilers. We can't look at Helena's drawings.
Yeah, Helena's the biggest spoiler of all. She's a walking spoiler. So Daemon drinks that beverage and then wakes up. It's a neat cut where does he really just wake up here? Or is it just how the show is showing us the next scene? Or like, it's unclear just how disoriented he is here.
You notice him drooling in this shot? Like the drool just drips out of his mouth. He's literally just like sitting there drooling.
I did not notice
I have
that.
it on the screen right now. You can just see like a droplet.
Really?
Yeah, it's so embarrassing for him.
Wow, that is one of the most embarrassing things he could do. Like as a guy like with his reputation, with his he's like the baddest warrior, and he's just drooling at like, oh, okay, yeah, wow. I did not see that. Yeah, so it's a pretty neat cut that he raises the drink, the Alys Rivers' his drink to his mouth, and then it cuts and he's lowering this drink, and he's so disoriented. So she says it will help with his sleep, but I don't know what help means. Like maybe it helps. Actually, he says help with your dreams, which it's certainly it seems like it gave him more of them. I don't know if that's kind of help he wanted. So more on that. We'll have to just keep looking at that because I don't know. Like this clearly isn't done yet.
All day long.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like he was blackout. He wasn't dreaming. He was just passed out. Like maybe he had some really intense visions during that, but like it's like when you if you're like on an acid trip, you know, like maybe you had some like spectacular things you experienced and then like they just fly out of your mind and you're like you basically could have blacked out for all the good it did to you if you tripped too hard, right?
Yeah. Now I'm going to be real honest with y'all. I have tried psychedelic drugs before.
Wow.
But here's what I'm going to go with that. I've never seen anything on them. I've never hallucinated anything on a psychedelic drug, but I have hallucinated on lack of sleep. Both audio and visual hallucinations on lack of sleep. So I think this is the most realistic way to make it unclear if this is supernatural or not. I mean, surely some of it is, but where the real and the supernatural split, where they come together, is very unclear. Because you'd see things when you're sleep deprived. You really do. That is a thing. So again, I like how well this is merged here, and he's sitting at table. He's talking to the Blackwood guy. He has to reintroduce himself. They're like, I just told you his name a second ago. He's like, who are you? Oh, yeah, well, nice to meet you. He's like, you probably did that already too, man.
Can I say something funny here?
Absolutely.
So this is Willem Blackwood. And the funny thing to me is that if y'all remember in our interview with Ryan Condal, we asked him about the names of the Blackwoods and why they went with Willem and Gerald. And he said, oh, well, sometimes marketing, other people name it, and we didn't name them. And he kind of played coy with us about it. Well, Willem Blackwood is in episode 4, and the funny thing is when he came to the interview and he said, I just came from sound mixing episode 4. So, like, he literally had just been looking at Willem Blackwood, and maybe they were still named by someone else, or maybe he was more referring to Gerald being named Gerald, which is a really weird name in the world. Willem makes sense. Gerald is not common.
I've heard that name before anywhere.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've ever heard Gerald in any setting.
Yeah, so maybe it was more casting shade on Gerald and not Willem, because Willem is very much real.
Willem is real, yeah. And maybe he hadn't decided at that point. They're like, yeah, we'll just use that name. Maybe at that point he just said they got stuck with using that name because it had already been settled for them. I don't know. Anyway,
but I think it makes sense. Willem is the brother of Lord Samwell, and so of course it makes a lot of sense that a second son would be the one vying for Rhaenyra's hand in that case.
His place makes sense. Yeah, his place in the story. I'm just talking about the use of the name, but I totally agree with you. So,
can I make a quick aside here, by the way?
Absolutely.
Usually I've been drinking a Magic Mind green drink, but today I tried to recreate the red pasted
very nice,
the Daemon drink. I actually did this originally in honor of Meleys, the Red Queen.
Oh,
but I realized, this is the red the Maester paste.
Nice. Yeah. So another one of the big moments happens here in terms of the dream stuff, which is Laena appears in place of a serving girl. It's Nana Blondell, which is interesting. It's adult Laena and not younger Laena, which it is for Rhaenyra, but it's a different thing. It's not quite the same. He wasn't like using her as a leverage for power so early on, although she was pretty young.
I think it's older Laena that he failed more.
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, probably. Yeah, older Laena he failed more.
Because she had her, I don't know, dreams, ambitions, or whatever. She wanted to be back with her home and her family, or at least do something more if they're going to be in Pentos. But he was just holed up in the library. Didn't want to leave. Didn't want to cooperate. Wasn't being a good father to the kids, etc.
Yeah, but I wonder how much they thought went back and forth on which one of them to use there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you said, there's the hunting dogs there, which was really interesting. I wondered about those too. And yeah, shout out Joe Magician, who points out that maybe what we're being shown here is the houses that are going to rule Harrenhal afterwards. Okay, so we've already had a few houses rule Harrenhal to this point, after House Strong, whose banners we were already shown, because there's no way to show their sigil with animals. It's 3 forks of the trident.
Yeah.
So after the Strongs comes the Lothstons, who we already referred to when we pointed out the bats that flew by, and the Wents are after the Lothstons, and then also bats, right? And then comes the War of Five Kings, where first of all Tywin Lannister takes it, and then he hands it off to Vargo Hoat, or rather he hands it off to, well, it gets lost to Roose Bolton because Vargo Hoat switches sides. And Vargo Hoat's the Black Coat. So there's no Leech Lord or Flayed Man that we've seen yet, but that's another one that might be kind of hard to represent. They could maybe show a leech.
I don't know. It was never like controlled by it was never like a Clegane castle per se, but Gregor like held the castle, right?
Yeah.
Their sigil's 3 dogs, so.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying is that so did Roose Bolton, and his sigil hasn't been seen yet. So if we do see a leech, that would be like the final
person. If we see
maybe there were leeches in Alice's concoction.
Hey, maybe that's where some of that blood came from. Either way, it's serious fear and loathing in Harrenhal vibes, right? We've got drug hazes, waking dreams, a lot of uncertainty, some very bad behavior, and it's most definitely bat country. Yes. So, yeah, Willem, as Ashaya said, this is the same guy who killed Gerald back in season 1. He refers to it. He refers to the duel of fighting. He's like, I liked Rhaenyra back then. I thought she had spirit. Like, it's kind of a weird thing to say. But Willem is regent to Benjicott Blackwood, who's underage. So, that's bloody Ben Blackwood from the books. Daemon accuses him of putting their grudge with the Brackens first. And he's right. He's like, he doesn't say you're right, but he's like, well, if you help us take down the Brackens, I'll join you. So yes, that's basically what we're saying. So Daemon's like, all right, fine. This is what it's going to take. He says, bring the Queen's justice to Stonehenge and the Blackens will join you. So I guess that's going to happen. I mean, there's tons of scenes still of Daemon outside of Harrenhal that we haven't seen yet. So he's 100% leaving Harrenhal this season and doing stuff. So I guess he's going to not get what he wants, because what he wanted was to make them come to him. And which maybe that's a bigger sign of authority. It makes him more kingly. I'm not really sure. But if he had started with the plan that Aegon wanted to do, which his counselors also say, we don't want you doing this, but we're going to do it with soldiers and not dragons, which is to just go from castle to castle and say, you join me or else. Daemon's making them come to him, and it's not working because there's no one leader to make them to make them all come. So now he's going to have to go to them one by one potentially, or at least that seems to be where it's headed.
That's, I think, why he was pushing so hard to get this Tully Lord.
Yes.
Because otherwise, it takes so much more time for him. He can go to one castle with his dragon and say, all right, give me all your bannermen or I'm going to burn you down. So fine. So he gets 300 soldiers. And he goes to the next castle. And so after 3 weeks, he might have 3,000 soldiers, as many as Cole. But in the meantime, while he's off doing that, Cole might show up at Harrenhal with 3,000 soldiers and just take it. Like, if he could just fast forward the whole process, if the Lord, whoever's in charge of Riverrun, sends a raven to all the bannermen and says, everyone go follow Daemon at Harrenhal.
That's normally how it works.
Everyone's there all at once.
That's what Daemon was expecting, but the works are cranked up. The gears are jammed up here. Fish without a head. Okay, so moving over to Driftmark.
Floundering.
Yeah, floundering. There you go. Very good. Yes. Flopping around. Okay, so Driftmark. Let's talk about that. Rhaenys approaches Alan, bringing up saving her husband's life and points out how handsome he is. Says, your mother must have been beautiful. It's a little awkward. And then kind of Corlys interrupts, but it's a little...
It's more than awkward. It's really sad.
Yeah.
It's really moving, actually. I mean, it's awkward for Alan, but like for Rhaenys, it's like what a moment of her imagining what the woman that Corlys cheated on. I don't know.
Yeah. So is that what you interpreted from this, Sean? By when he says, I know, when she says, I know who he is? Is that what did you get that? Yeah. Okay.
Frankly, if Sean hadn't guessed at this point that these are two bastards, I was gonna just tell him because everyone in the world has guessed this at this point. I've seen like people's mothers be like, "Oh, that's like, like we're not pretending anymore. They're bastards."
Anyway, yeah.
I hadn't guessed before this episode at all, but when in this scene is like, oh, and also she even said, "I've been talking to your captain." She probably picked up, even if the captains don't tell her directly, she can tell what it is that they're not telling her. Does that make sense?
There's a topic they're uncomfortable with. Yeah. She susses that out.
And so I'm also, this is Alan, and with, I've forgotten the other character's name. Adam. I'm assuming that they are both bastards of Corlys.
Yeah, they're brothers.
By different women. Maybe he's done this a bunch of times. He's constantly off at sea for years at a time. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's true.
And I guess it makes sense that he would try to hide it too. And maybe these guys would try to hide it. They don't want to. I can imagine the drama of their lives. You could probably make another series just about them and their adventures. And
if their dad's not going to talk about it, then they shouldn't either. Like it's like that's kind of the message. Like, well, if he's not going to make it public, then we can't. What would he do to us if he doesn't want that? How what could be the blowback to us could be severe. Yeah, like she doesn't know. Like it's picture one of the most important bastard stepmother relationships we've seen, which is Jon Snow and Catelyn, which did not go very well. So we have an example of why these two might not want to, like, I don't want her to know. What will she do? Like, they don't know if she's going to be a Catelyn or a whatever and be like, no, send him away, or something worse than Catelyn, which is like have them killed or something like that, like a Cersei, who might do something like that,
She seemed to be all the way on the other side of the spectrum, though. She was acceptant, supportive, even.
Which is refreshing. Yeah, that's nice.
And there's another piece to this. It also explains why Corlys was so dismissive when Rhaenys was pushing him to name an heir.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He was like, I don't want to be the girl. I don't want to be a little baby. It's got to be someone who knows how to sail. I've got a few people in mind already. My other sons that you don't know about.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. That's right. Cool. Yes, that's where we're at with this. It's very interesting to see where that's going forward, and who knows.
Can I say how much I just absolutely loved the choice to have this scene with Rhaenys and to give Rhaenys the scene where she confirms that she knows and she kind of gives her approval to him and her blessing, as it were, to raise him up and make him the heir and the lord and all that. And I had wondered whether Rhaenys would react in anger or what, and so I had wanted Corlys to give her the option, the same as I always wanted Ned Stark to tell Catelyn, I really think you should tell your partner in life something like this, and especially now, again, at the moment to tell her, if I could see why he wouldn't have told her before, frankly. The moment to tell her, I think, would have been in that scene that you brought up, Sean, when she was like, who is gonna take over? I think that's your opportunity. And I want to bring this back to, like, at the end, I have to wonder if that's part of the calculus she had in deciding to sacrifice herself. She knew that it would be easier for Corlys and to have these heirs. She wouldn't be humiliated as having, in terms of if she's weighing, like, is this the time for me to do this? I feel like her knowing about Alan and Adam was a significant factor.
Yeah.
And if you go back to that moment, he's like, we'll find a way through. He's like, he doesn't have an answer. He doesn't give her a straight answer. He just kind of puts it off, and she's frustrated. She's like, what do you didn't give me an answer. Like, what is that?
Yeah. He like literally pulled his hand away from hers to get away and avoid continuing that conversation.
Which, by the way, I noticed that in all the previous scenes, Alan's like, when he wants to leave Corlys, he's like, I have duties to attend to. When Corlys wants to leave Rhaenys, he's like, I have matters to attend. No, he says he does. He says, I have duties to attend to, and leaves. And then in this scene is what you're talking about. He says, don't you have duties to attend to? And he goes away.
That's what he says to Alan.
Yes, exactly. It's hilarious. They were always like, duty calls, What about your duty to your child? Yeah.
Two other little notes on this, by the way. One is, I think there was a parallel of sorts between this realization of infidelity, if you will, between Corlys and Rhaenys, and between Alicent and Larys. And I think it was the very next scene we see Alicent getting the moon tea.
Yes.
And then later on, Larys kind of pieces together what's going on. I think it's a similar sort of realization. And also similarly, both of them are like, all right, let's just move forward. They're both kind of okay with this thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is it sheds a new light on the scene when Adam saw sea smoke flying around.
It sure does.
I wonder if there's a new... because the very next scene after that, they showed... Oh, crap, I always forget. Rhaena?
Yep.
The younger daughter?
No, Baela.
I thought that,
Baela.
She's going to get sea smoke now. But the fact that she's just leaving makes me think that's less likely. So what was that all about? So now I wonder if it might be Adam soon.
Okay, yeah. I thought you meant Baela at first, but no, you were talking about Rhaena. Yeah, cool. So yeah, Corlys gets defensive about Rhaenys saying he should be raised up, and she just switches the topic to the Black Council, and that is our segue to the Black Council. Alfred Broom is still making his accusations. He's still at the forefront of the we're scared about the inaction faction. And, he's not entirely wrong, but we've been over this before. He basically says the same things Daemon is saying about the Riverlands. He's like, we need a leader. We need leadership here. Like, y'all need a leader. We need a leader. Rhaenys says, I'm handling things, but Broom's like, well, why are you so important? It's like, well, you're not even a landholder, bro. You're not a dragon rider or a lord.
Who even are you?
Yeah, who are you?
I am Princess Rhaenys Targaryen.
Yeah, he's like the lowest ranking guy there by far. He's a real upstart.
This is honestly really true to life. It's like, wow, the worst and most incompetent person you know is the loudest in the room. Surprise.
The one thing he says that's right is that, well, it doesn't matter what tongue says it if it's true. Well, it doesn't mean what you're saying is true. But he seems to chafe under the rule of women. I think that's the pattern here. Because he denigrates Baela, he laughs at Rhaenyra that one time, and now he's coming after Rhaenys. But when Corlys walks in the room, he's like, I'm sorry.
Man, I better do what I'm told now.
Yeah, so it's like, why is Corlys so much more intimidating than Rhaenys? Like, they're both intimidating. They both have the ability to just like snap their fingers and have you executed, or do it themselves. Like, yeah, so that seems to be an undercurrent here. I would take note of that.
Frankly, it almost is unbelievable to me. Like the amount of disrespect that he has for a princess of the realm and a dragon rider and a lady, and like beyond all of these things that she is, then he is Ser Alfred Broom. He is like the Castellan if he is that in the show, but he's not even a lord.
I think what we're seeing in part is that they are a more tolerant group. Like Rhaenyra is more willing to entertain people like yelling at her or being resisting her authority because she wants to hear other opinions. It's part of the way she conducts business. She wants to hear other opinions. She wants them to speak up, even if it means being she'd rather them be a little insulting than to not say the things that are important. Whereas the Green Council are not like that. Like you watch what you say around Aegon. Like, as you can see, Otto like said things and he got kicked out for it. Like, and
look what that
Alfred
leads
says
to.
these things and does not get kicked out for it.
And that leads to people making secret plans behind his back.
Yes.
You know, like it. Yeah.
They undermine. Exactly. You're absolutely right. When they don't conduct their council business openly, it's conducted in secret. Yeah. So you're totally right. That's a great take there. So Rhaenyra does eventually show up, right? And they harangue her for the risk and the absence, but it dies down quickly when she's like, look, y'all, my bad, but I'm in it now. War. We're going. It's go time. So like, oh, okay then. Well, what are we doing? So instead of arguing about that, they're just like, let's argue about who to send to Rook's Rest, that's the kind of argument maybe that they want to be having. Like, all right, let's argue about battle plans, not about whether we can stop the war still when you're the only one in the room who thinks that we can, you know. So they're finally on the same page about that, at least.
I will say it was a little surprising, disappointing to me that even Jace was like, I don't know what word to use, slightly petulant towards his mom. You know, he like.
Well, think about what position she left him in.
Right. Yeah, I understand his frustration. Yeah.
Yeah, like she should have told him he's the heir to the throne. He can't know that you went to King's Landing. Come on now. I'm sorry, but like if you can't tell your son and heir where you went, I just think she messed up by not communicating that to
100%. Because what if she didn't come back? They would still not, they wouldn't know where she was, and they'd be like, what happened? Like she's just gone. They would never have learned. In a sense, it's very similar to Aegon taking matters into his own hands and going to the battle on his own. It's just that Rhaenyra didn't get caught. She didn't. I mean, of course, it's a lot worse going into a battle. That's obviously more dangerous, you know. But it's a bit of a parallel. It's just she didn't suffer the consequence. The only consequences were getting yelled at when she came back. Whereas Aegon,
it's also worth noting,
in horrible shape. Yeah.
Not to take it away any of the points you're making, but it is worth noting. You know, if you're going to draw a parallel, the primary contrast is. He was excited to go kill people. She was trying to go save people. You know?
Yeah, that too. Yeah, that
Their
too.
motivation.
Well, I think Aegon's also was mostly trying to go prove himself. He was trying to go attack help the army and attack the Queen's dragons if they were there or whatever. Yeah, but still, you're not wrong. I'd say killing wasn't his motivation. He was willing to kill to prove himself, which is to distinguish him from a Joffrey who just liked killing, you know. But we've already been through that. He's not like Joffrey that much. Anyway, so I appreciate that Rhaenyra is willing to go into battle, but her son and her council are right. It's not a good idea. Don't put her at risk like that. The same reason they don't want her sneaking into King's Landing is basically the same reason they don't want her flying into battle. Like her claim is too important. And
the same reason the Green Council didn't want Aegon going into
exactly. And this is the same point I was making earlier. She takes that disagreement as advice, as counsel, whereas Aegon took it as like disobedience or a challenge, right? Yeah. She sees the logic behind their argument. Aegon is just like, no, it's just, they're just backfooted. They're just sidelining me. No, I'm as tough as anyone. Yeah, he just has the completely wrong approach about it.
And it's also worth noting Rhaenyra had the other correct option, which is Rhaenys.
Yes.
Like, and not that there weren't other correct options for Aegon too, but I can imagine that she felt it was important, since this is about her, to risk it herself.
Yes.
You know, like Ned Stark wants to be the one that swings the sword or whatever. But Rhaenys steps up and says, I'm the one who should be doing this. Like, relatively speaking, I am more expendable than you.
Yeah.
And my dragon is big. She had all the reasons ready to go. And like you said, Rhaenyra's like, okay, yeah,
that's logical. I don't like it, but you're right. You know, it's that kind of thing. Whereas Aegon's like, I don't like it, so I'm not going to do it. It's that's the difference between them. You know, so yeah, Rhaenyra is just not concerned about other people looking stronger, but she's not worried about people overshadowing her. She's been through that with Daemon. She sees that that's a thing that he deals with, and she's like, I'm not like that. You know,
it's funny because Laurie says that Cole's victories are like to incite Rhaenyra's fury. Like, I don't know.
Not really. Yeah. Not really. You know, just
confusion. She's confused.
Yeah, it certainly brings a reaction, but not fury.
I'm not sure how much Laurie really believes that. He just knows that will keep everyone on board with his plan.
Well, he only told that to Alicent, but let's hold off on that thought. We're going to talk about that later. Anyway, so in the meantime, it works as a parallel that they both did something extremely dangerous without their council agreeing to it, right? They wouldn't have had it been discussed. Well, it was discussed in Aegon's case, and they said no. So There's this cool thing Shay had noticed, or we noticed together. There's when Rhaenys picks Cole's marker up off the map, the battle map, it's a little chunk of coal.
Well, when I noticed it at first, I was like, how do they know Cole has a unicorn horn on his, like, horse? Like, I thought it was a horn. And then Aziz was like, no, look, there's a chunk of coal at the top. And I was like, oh, as soon as my eyes adjusted, I couldn't unsee it. But yeah, they have a little Cole marker for Cole. Very nice.
Even though it's COLE, whatever. It does have the little blocks of coal.
Yeah, that's what is on
shield.
his sigil, the 9 dots of coal or whatever. Yeah, because he's been a very bad boy.
I appreciate that Rhaenyra basically said the line. She said, okay, I win my claim or I die. Those are the options left to me. Although she's not telling the council the third reason, which he pulls Jace aside. I like how he comes to confront her. He's like, I want to fight for her. He's been impatient before. This is consistent with him. He's impatient with Luke training. He was impatient with, what was the other big impatient thing he did? I'm forgetting it, but there was a couple other impatient things he did. Anyway, so this is in line with how he's been so far, which is, typical, just a younger man that's like ready to go for it. And so she pulls him aside and tells him the Song of Ice and Fire and says, actually, yeah, there is more than just my claim. I wouldn't do all this just for a claim, actually, son. And I hope you share these values. She says it's something she should have told him before. And I bet a lot of the audience were like, yeah. And we're like, yes, you should have. Yeah, so we're like, yeah, you should have. So she says, the horrors I've just unleashed cannot be for a throne alone. Like, okay, yeah, fair point. Good call, I guess. And we don't actually see how Jace reacts to this, which is interesting. I'm sure we will, though. But it's also talked about. It's spoken over the start of the battle. Like she's describing the Song of Ice and Fire as the Dance of the Dragons begins, as if this line of dragons must stay together to fight the war to come. Yet here it's being spoken right as they're splitting apart, right as it's the point of no return. And it's super cool. He asks the questions and she, goes on the spiel, and we're seeing people get shot down by arrows and trees falling and the yells of battle. And it's mostly just arrows because the dragons haven't arrived yet. Now, before we go to the battle, before we go to our little break here as well, take a look at the skull behind them. There's a big skull back behind Rhaenyra and Jace. It's framing their conversation. And I think we've got a couple shots of it here. And we were wondering what skull that is. Maybe our best guess is Meraxes. Maybe Meraxes was sent back after she was shot down over Dorne. If you look at the eye, it looks like there's a bigger hole than there would be if it was just an eye socket.
Yeah,
and she was shot in the eye. Yeah. Good call. Yeah. We were talking about what that might be right before this episode. We had not come up with an answer, but I think Ashaya figured it out while we were sitting here, because the broken eye, I think, is the telltale sign there. Good call. Because that's where the bolt hit her. Right in the eyeball. Indeed. Folks, we are doing episode 8 of our predictions series, meaning the Saturday episodes. It actually won't be a predictions series, more than it will be a recap of the season, but it's going to be live at City Winery in New York City on August 3rd. If you want to check out the event page, go to bit.ly/HOW Live NYC. That's How Live NYC. bit.ly/How Live NYC. The link is in the description, or in the video description, or the podcast description, whichever one you happen to be partaking of right now. We're going to have a costume contest. We're going to have bottles of wine with the History of Westeros logo on it. We're going to have a great time. So if you are in New York City or in the area, or going to be in the area on August 3rd or around then, get your ticket, come see us, get your wine bottle signed, or just come say hello and hang out with us while we recap House of the Dragon Season 8 and prepare ourselves for the finale, which will be the
You said
following
Season
day.
8, wow.
Season 8, oh my gosh, we're thinking way ahead here. Sorry, episode 8. We're thinking way ahead, yes. By the way, folks, yes, House of the Dragon is now going to have 8 seasons, as per me just now. Yeah.
30 episodes per season.
Okay, let's keep it moving. I hope to see you all in New York City, but we got a lot more to talk about. Anthony De Palma says, I like the idea that Daemon and Otto both tried grooming children to inherit the throne with the belief that they'd be easy to manipulate. Yeah, and neither of them were. That's always the flaw with that problem. When you're trying to manipulate a child before you know what kind of person they're going to be as an adult. Like, yeah, get them early. I see the logic behind that. It's evil. It's corrupt. But you also teach kids good values as a kid, when they're young, with the hope that sticks more. So you see that's why that logic exists in the first place. Kids are more impressionable. Of course, you teach them when they're young. And yeah. So yes, it definitely happened on both sides. Otto and his own daughter, Daemon and his own niece, manipulated in different ways, but for basically the same purpose.
Yeah, I mean, Otto and Aegon, too, beyond that. I mean,
yeah, you're right. Otto and Aegon. Yeah, you're right.
Aegon is the monarch that's being ruled. Yeah, it's really a Varys young Griff type beat there with trying to, have your figurehead type king.
True. Very true. Yeah. But the puppet has ideas of its own. So let's talk about the Green Council, the other side of things. Aegon continues to be very reactive, a terrible quality in any leader. Aemond calmly explains the logic behind their strategic choices, and it sounds like he's making sense. But Aegon just wants take Harrenhal. No, tell him to go to Harrenhal. I want that back. It's kind of comedic, and it's also a little pathetic, a little comedic at the same time. He yells at Larys. He's like, "It's your castle," He's like, well. Larys' response is that quip about it being crippled, which is more of an attempt to deflect than to be genuinely funny. By the way, as predicted, and having Larys at council is a thing now, and it makes it interesting. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention, Mysaria was overseeing the Black Council from above in a similar way to how Larys would look down. But she's so far not sitting at the Black Council, which I was wondering about. So one yes, the other no, but it's still early. So yeah, so that was more of Aegon just acting out at council, and then they have their moment there where he's haranguing different people. And this episode, of course, is very intense and tragic, but just like a lot of episodes of the season and like them in general, they had their moments of comic relief. Alys had several funny lines. Have you experienced anything of note? That was so good. And the drinking's guard bumping into each other when they're leaving the room with Alicent and Aegon, or Aegon doing the you guys are boring, and he makes the face, right? Which, by the way, is another Michael Scott moment. When he does you guys are boring. So twice now he's acted like Michael Scott, and Ashaya pointed out that he even gets burned like Michael Scott, Rook's Rest, Foreman Grill. So if you're trying to channel a bad leader, Michael Scott's a great choice. So
this face made me laugh so hard. It was the funniest, less than a millisecond thing. I still laugh thinking about it, and he just leaves.
I can't not see it as Michael Scott now.
He has done faces like that, haven't you? Once you hear it, you're like, yeah, he does do that. Yeah.
Totally, yeah. We need to get a side by side. I'm sure there's a bunch of Steve Pro looking like that.
I'll find a pic of Michael Scott looking like that and do it. It'll be in our breakdown video that when I do the fun edits and stuff. I was already planning on grabbing it.
It's also true that many people in the office do make plans around Michael Scott without his knowledge, which of course is a big part here. Aegon, but that actually comes out during the council that Aegon has been left out of the command process, and the Green Council has too. But the council being left out is one thing, since the Hand of the King outranks them, and they're kind of afraid of Aemond. And it's not Aemond's fault that Cole sent the message just to him, but Aegon, he's the king. And gets mad and embarrassed, and then gets more embarrassed by Aemond speaking High Valyrian. What a cringe scene this was. It was so good, but also just, oh man, what an embarrassing moment. And the comedic slow turn of the Green Council's heads, turning to look at Aegon, oh man. It was painful and cringe and funny all together.
And it was just, turnabout's fair play, right? I mean, Aegon utterly humiliated Aemond in front of all of them, and so yeah.
He damn sure did. That was absolutely payback. The question is whether the rest of the episode is also payback. I think so, but it's not so simple as that.
I want to say also, I think this was layered, because in a way, Aemond is kind of protecting Aegon from greater embarrassment. Like, he's making sure that he gets his plan to go through, right? That one thing is what's happening here. And he does it by basically embarrassing Aegon into realizing you don't know what's going on. You haven't been paying attention. I'm better than you. But he does it in another language, so everyone can't exactly hear it. And when Aegon finally responds, it's like broken. It's like an incoherent sentence, right?
Yeah.
He just doesn't know the language as well as Aemond. Just like everything else. They both had the same opportunities growing up. Aemond just took advantage of him and Aegon didn't, right?
Yep.
And so now here we are. Aemond is qualified and Aegon is not. And so because they're talking another language and Aemond puts it back onto Aegon and Aegon says something and Aemond's response is, He okay, he agrees with them, and then back in a common tongue says, okay, so we're going forward with my plan now. Right?
Yeah.
Without quite the embarrassment of what was actually said there, he kind of makes everyone, including Aegon, realize that his plan is what they're doing.
Yes,
it was masterfully done by Aemond.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's a great take. No notes on that interpretation of the scene. He's doing all those things, and he saved him a little bit of face, even though it was still embarrassing. And he's breathing heavily at the end. Aegon, he has no response, but he's just like, you can see his body language. He's just, and there's a lot of that this episode of people breathing heavily because they're frustrated or in battle or whatever. It's just an interesting recurring thing in this episode. They may not have even planned it, but it comes up a lot. So they have to plan around their own bad leadership here, and that's exactly what Cole and Aemond did. And though, as we'll see, even Aemond and Cole didn't quite tell each other everything, although maybe it's more Aemond than Cole. I think Cole did tell Aemond everything, but Aemond maybe left a few things. But I think mostly what Aemond did was just react to the situation. I think the plan originally was as it was, and Aemond didn't have any variation plan, but they adapted to the arrival of Aegon separately in very different ways, but we're not quite there yet. Let's talk about Alicent had 3 conversations of note. She wasn't at the council session, which is one of the part of one of the conversations. So Orwyle is the first conversation. She drops the stone dragon when Orwyle first comes in, and that's important. Like, this is symbolic. She shows she's on edge, lost on thought, because it's still a very simple thing to make her just start and drop the dragon and knock on the door. Shouldn't be that startling, really, normally, but she's clearly lots on her mind. This is that same dragon, presumably, that she had repaired for Viserys back in season 1, which I believe that was episode 2. And now it's broken again. Symbolism is even darker, because in that scene, she kind of made it whole for him, and it made him whole, and it was kind of like, well, maybe this isn't great for you, but it's still kind of nice. It's wholesome, even if it's going to not end well. And this, though, it's like, well, the broken dragons are like, well, we're about to see all that. Like, the House of the Dragon is truly split now. I don't know if it can be repaired this time.
Yeah, it's foreshadowing for dragons falling and breaking at the end of this episode. Also, I think it might be the last piece of Viserys' Valyrian setup. Remember, that's what that dragon was part of, and Aegon smashed it all, but she still had that one dragon, but now that's gone too.
Yeah, that's a good
all
point.
Falling apart.
So his shadow, Viserys, that is, his looms over all this, which plays deeply into the bad leadership theme that's here. Like, a lot of that is started with him, and then you could argue started before him. Even he wasn't raised to be a ruler either, so garbage in, garbage out, bad leaders choose bad counselors, and then the next set of leaders follow in those footsteps. So she gets that moon tea from Orwell. I think a lot of people probably laughed at this moment because the way they talk about it, they both know, like, he knows and she knows he knows, but they have to be politic about it, diplomatic. She's setting up plausible deniability. I doubt she thinks Orwell is fooled, but she has plausible deniability. I will observe the girl carefully. She says it's great.
I think the conversation between her and Orwell is very similar to the conversation between her and Larys later, where they both, it's almost like this check that, like, we're good, right? You know what we're going to say in public. We know how to be tactful. We are going to guard each other's secrets, right? Yes?
Yeah.
Cool? Okay, let's go. Yeah.
So perhaps as a way to deflect or as a way to set up for the viewers to know what she's thinking about, she asks what he thought about Viserys and the succession, but Orwell, you don't get to be Grand Maester without understanding that you should not answer questions like that. And he's like, oh, I have no way. I wouldn't have any way to know. He never talked to me about it.
The same tact that he just had with her and her dilemma, he's going to use it when she asks this question too, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, I will ask the other girl about that. Yeah. Refer to the non-existent third person here. So are we meant to think Orwell talked to Larys? Is maybe that how the next scene gets set up? Or is just Larys checking in on her on his own is totally believable. But given that we know Larys has spies in her household now, it could be both. I don't know. Like he's got his fingers everywhere.
If I were Larys, I would want one of my informants to be the Maester, who deals with everyone's, medical ailments. Like that would be a very powerful. And Letter is like, of all the people he could get, Orwell would be the best one.
It's a good point. Director of Communications, Medicine. Yeah, those are two very personal things.
Even if he doesn't have actual Orwell, though, any other maester or any other servant could see that Orwell just made this potion and then went to Alicent's room and tell that to Larys.
Yes.
That's enough for him to put it together. So yeah.
Absolutely. So now with Larys comes in, instead of a stone dragon, this time she's heating stones by the fire just to use as, hot compresses, for aching for her stomach. So the conversation with him is as highly charged as it often is, though at least for now, he doesn't seem to be pushing for any sexual favors for now. He tries to make everything personal, though. Speaking to Alicent the woman, he's trying to talk to her about how she feels about Kristen Cole being in danger, but every answer isn't come from Alicent the woman. It comes from Alicent the Queen Dowager. He's trying to speak to her on a personal level, but she answers as if they're at council, or as if it's like, well, Kristen Cole's the hand of the king. We all should pray for his success. Like she won't answer on personal terms. I think it's very interesting, that dynamic that's happening there. So he kind of moves on from that. She's like, well, what did I miss at council? And this is super interesting. He's like, oh, Aegon's mad about losing Harrenhal. He doesn't talk about anything else. Doesn't mention the showdown between her sons, the argument, any of that. He just leaves that out, which is kind of sneaky. And I don't know exactly why he's doing that, but it's just, it's just a control thing. Surely it's all about power and control one way or the other.
Yeah, it doesn't benefit him for her to know that Aegon might need some extra comfort or coddling. It doesn't benefit. I can't see a way that it would benefit him for Alicent to know about that. But it does make you wonder if he would throw his lot in with Aemond, or if he is in on Aegon. Like, who does he see being powerful long term? Because he doesn't want to bet on the wrong dragon.
It's a good point.
I think he's playing both sides. I think at the moment he's got an amount of control over Aegon, but I think he understands that Aemond is really doing more than Aegon is. Aemond is the one he needs to have more control, or at least be in good with. He may not be able to control Aemond.
That's the problem here, that a little from column A, a little from column B. Aemon's the one that's maybe the better one to back, but Aegon's the one he can actually manipulate, which might be better for him personally, as far as his own power goals. But yeah. So another thing that he says that's interesting is even when he seems to be understanding, that he seems to point out that he knows that she and Cole have been hooking up, he's like, yeah, but it's okay. It's a sin to deny your desires. He's like, yeah, I know, but I don't have a problem with it. That doesn't mean he won't use it as leverage against her. It also doesn't mean he wants her to stop, because, well, if she stops sleeping with Cole, then he can't use that as leverage against her. Like, what good is a secret what's good is a dirty secret that isn't taking place anymore? Like, you can't prove it, then,
Yeah, I think Larys benefits from every person who is corrupt.
Good point. Good way to say it.
I think it's also another example of him trying to communicate with her on a personal level, because he doesn't want to think it's a sin to have indulged his fantasies or whatever. That's
right? True. So the next topic is Viserys' intentions and how he can see from her books, and maybe because of the question to Orwell. That's why I was wondering about that. If he thinks she's wondering about that, and if that means she's not as committed to the war as she had seemed. I'm not entirely sure why he's concerned about that, but I think that's why. Because look, he wants her to admit that we're at war now, and then who wins is all that matters. The significance of Viserys' intentions died with him. That's a line from the trailer. We've been waiting for that one for a while. And it's true. At this point, it doesn't matter what Viserys wanted. And he wants to hear her say that, because he's like, look, we're fully committed now. You can't be hemming and hawing now that the war is on. Like, the time to hem and haw is long past. We need you committed. We're committed. Our lives are at stake. You just said yourself, someone's going to a bunch of people are gonna die. The winner's gonna climb over all those bodies to ascend the throne. We don't want to be those bodies. We don't want them climbing over us. So you better be in this, lady. That's what he's saying here, but very diplomatically, very politic instead of the way I just said it. And she agrees. She knows he's doing this. She says he's like, yeah, and he closes the book like the topic is over. Right, he closes like, okay, that topic is over. Closes the book on that. It's like the bloody hands thing. It's one of the most obvious forms of visual symbolism. Bloody hands means you're guilty. Closing the book means that topic's over. But it clearly isn't, because later in the episode, she's like, Aegon, where are your father's books? You know, and he's like, oh, I had them removed. And she at first is like, why did you get rid of them? He's like, I didn't burn them. So those books are still there somewhere. She might just, the very next episode, she might be looking at those books. So I wonder what it is she's looking for. The books in her chamber, I think, were history books, at least that's how Varys or Larys was referring to them. But I think she might be looking at prophecy books. Like those would be the books her father had or her husband had, you know?
Yeah, I think she's expanding the scope of her research, but I think that's clear because she's looked at the history books and now she's looking for even more books that were in Viserys' room, now are elsewhere, wherever Aegon removed them. And thank you to Aegon for calling Alicent out for being so, like, rude and extreme to him. He's like, I didn't burn them. You don't have to call me, like, an idiot over this. Like, I just removed them from my room.
Yeah, removed doesn't mean incinerated. Like, where did you get, like, that's quite a leap, Mom.
Don't assume the worst of me, Mom, just because I'm a rapist.
So that's the third conversation is between these two. So Alicent's already upset. That's part of why she rounds on him like that. She's already upset, but she rarely has any patience for him anyway. She's very commonly speaks to him harshly. And this is another scene where someone is breathing heavily. She's like visibly like, because she's mad, and it's showing in her body language. And it was kind of like that before he even started talking. So he Joffreys a bit here. You know, he's like, I'm the king. They should listen to me. That's what I mean by Joffreying, saying I'm the king. But she reminds him again that just being king doesn't like mean you're suddenly smarter. The crown doesn't give you new powers. Well, it does, but not new thinking powers. It gives you new authority, not new. Yeah. And so she's like, look, you weren't taught. She doesn't say it this way. She's like, look, you weren't taught how to be a king. So the only way for you to not screw up is to do nothing, because we didn't prepare you for this, and you're not a natural at it. So I sympathize with Alicent's points, but it's another example of her coming up short as a mother. This is an example. This is another person trying to talk to her on the personal level, but she just goes at it as a queen dowager and not as a mother. And he's trying to talk to her as a mother. And this is your son, not the master of whispers who's tried to get feet pics from you. So I think she should have been a little more compassionate here, and she may regret it even more after, once she sees what happened.
Yeah, you're right. I think she's going to really, I guess that really beat herself up for him going to do that. I can't see how she wouldn't partially blame herself, even though I don't think she really should. But regardless, I think Alicent, I had such mixed feelings on her here, because she's really cruel. She's really mean. But I also think she makes some very good points that, show her as, I appreciated her saying, no, the crown does not imbue you with wisdom. The people on this council are learned people, they're competent people and all that. I will say a lot of those people on that council got to that position through, nepotism and then in the aristocracy and all of that, but still they're generally more competent than Aegon is. Her point remains, and I appreciated her pointing that out, but like you said, Aziz, it just isn't the time for that. And I think the other thing here is that she just took her moon tea recently, and I think she's extra emotional, grouchy, sensitive. She's willing to snap at him more than she would have otherwise. So there's a few things
especially getting called out. She just had that scene with Lara. She's like, God, this guy is so
exactly. She's extra irritable. She's just irritable right now, and it's that makes sense to me. But she also doesn't know what a rough time Aegon actually has, because Larys didn't tell her. She doesn't know that Aegon was just completely humiliated, and he does not need to be more humiliated by her.
Larys didn't tell her, but also she wasn't at that council meeting. That is a duty that she has, that because of other ways she's been shirking her duties, she missed out on.
That's kind of a fair point.
Yeah, I think that this is a strong parallel to Otto's last interaction with Aegon, that she's just emotional and on edge and fed up, and she just said a bunch of things she shouldn't have said, even if she's right. Everything Otto told Aegon, it was pretty much right, But it didn't stop Aegon from firing him his hand. Like it's understandable that they're losing control of their emotions in these moments. But it doesn't mean just because we understand that you're losing control that it's okay with Aegon.
Yeah, and they're dealing with a guy who has even less control than them by far. Like, don't set this guy off, this guy with all this power. Like, don't do that. Yeah.
And the worst part about it is that even though she was sort of being snippy and saying things that were mean and she could have handled it all better, she still had his attention. The last moment he said, okay, Mom, what do I do? And she could have, in that moment, she could have said, like, just listen to the other counselors. Go back and have court and let the commoners. You did a good job last time when the people were coming to you with problems. You helped them find solutions. Go have a speech, throw a feast, a tournament, do some PR. She could have given him something to do, even if it's busy work or beneath him or whatever. But to say nothing guarantees he will do something.
Yes, absolutely.
He was ready to listen to her. And her advice was nothing. Yep. And if she had told him anything, I think he would have done it. And even if it was busy work, even if it just delays his boredom for 3 days or something, that's all that she needed to do was delay his boredom for 3 days.
Yep.
Because
instead, he sits there and keeps drinking. And if you notice, that pitcher was full when he sat down at that table, and then he eventually did, to make sure we know it's empty, he pushes it slowly off the table like a cat.
Yeah.
And he was drinking before he got to that room, and he's drinking while he's putting his armor on. So he is just like mad drunk. And it's the boy in Aegon who makes this decision to fly off, not the king. A very, very drunk boy. And it's just like Rhaenyra, it was the mother in her that flew off to find her son's body, but it's the queen making the decision to send Rhaenys to Rook's Rest. And it's Aegon, the boy, who is going off to Rook's Rest. It's at no point is Aegon the king in play here. He's trying to be, but the boy and the king aren't separate with him. He hasn't separated them at any point. So the duality of roles is really big in this episode. It's always big in this show because everyone, all these royals and nobles have these dual roles. They are mothers and lords, or mothers and, or both mother and grandmother in some cases.
Or mother and queen.
Right, mother and queen, or king and father for Aegon. Hand and father for Otto. Lord Commander in hand for Criston Cole, which actually comes up pretty big too, the difference there in the battle that we're getting to. So, and Daemon has more than one role. Like he's king consort, uncle, husband, and father, which part of that's Targaryen
and
incest.
Murderer.
Yeah. And some like Aemond, maybe he's mostly only about power. He doesn't have that much family loyalty. He has shown loyalty to Helena in the past, but not as he's called his mother tooth-tongued, and obviously has all sorts of problems with Aegon. So anyway, they're not all the same. All right, let's talk about the battle. Let's talk about it. It's an interesting name, Rook's Rest.
What battle?
Oh, the one at the end, that little thing that happened,
Oh, I didn't finish the episode. I didn't know it was going to be battle.
So it does not refer to rook as in the piece in chess, even though would be kind of fitting because a rook is a castle in chess, but it's not. There's no chess in Westeros or Essos. Rooks are a type of bird. They're in the corvid family, so they're very similar to crows and ravens and such. They have white beaks instead of black beaks. They don't live in America or in South America or in Africa. They only live in Europe and Asia. They only breed in Asia, so a lot of us aren't as familiar with them. You might recognize the scene of this battle from Gladiator. This is the same site that they filmed that scene in early Gladiator, where they're fighting against those Germanic armies, I believe. And it's because of that just very distinct tree line. That it goes from flat ground to tree line and very quickly, and that's really important for having their shelter, and their army can emerge pretty close from the castle. So it's really good. Now, it starts simply with just some felling of trees. The castle's like, oh boy, there they are. We need to get some help. And then we go away to do some more setup. The Green Council is very pleased with Criston Cole's progress. We hear he's sending back loot from the castles they've taken, and money is becoming an issue. They're feeding the dragons is getting harder. The blockade is pinching them. So it's a problem. In fact, talking about how well Criston Cole is doing is one of the things that gets Aegon a little upset. The thing that really sets him off is when Jasper Ironrod goes, when Aemond and Vhagar is here to protect us, we're doing, and he's like, you are boring me. You're boring. Like, that's the last thing that sets him off. So the Blacks, on the other hand, are worried about Cole's part. While the Greens are praising Criston Cole, the Blacks are like, yikes, that's the biggest boogeyman for them. And Harrenhal is also worried about Criston Cole. Sir Simon says to Daemon, he's like, Criston Cole's target is probably here. His eventual target is probably here. He hasn't gone, and even Gwaine expected Criston Cole to turn west for Harrenhal and made that joke about it. And he's like, no, we're not ready to do that just yet.
I couldn't help but think of, in our Facebook group, Michael Klarfeld had a post where he was like, it looks like they're going out the wrong way from King's Landing to go to Harrenhal, blah, blah. And he's like, that's the map maker that did a map behind us right now, Claridox, Michael Klarfeld. So he had a map post, and a bunch of us commented, we're like, they're not going to Harrenhal. They're not going there. You're right, but
no, they're going the long way. They're going all the way around the globe, coming back around. They'll never see that coming. So Michael Klarfeld and Gwaine Hightower had the same reaction there as a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So now Cole knows. This is why I say Cole's plan was pretty clever, even though it didn't quite work the way he wanted to. He knows they know they're watching him. So he used that to their advantage. He's like, they know I don't have a dragon. They'll send one, hence the trap, right? Aegon calls Rook's Rest a pathetic prize during council, but it's explained why it has strategic value even without the trap. He doesn't mention the trap as to why it has strategic value, and those reasons are it forces smaller castles to take a side. You're like, nobody's too small for this war. You have to choose, like the marketing for the show. All must choose. This is a council member on the Black Council, so they want to punish the Rhaenyra's closest supporters to punish other would-be joiners to cut that off before it even happens. Also, as Aemond,
it might split motivations on the council. If those other councils, because they might go to my castle next. We need to defend that.
Yes.
And Rhaenyra wants to go to Harrenhal or whatever the thing, and that suddenly they'll have their personal motivations get mixed up and stuff.
Very good point. That's a great point. Yeah. So, and then the final point made by Aemond is that it's the last available port to them. So if they will try to stop us from taking it, because then they won't have a place to land troops anymore unless they take one of these other castles back. So it's a pretty solid logic all the way around, even without the trap included, which makes it an even better plan. Backing up a little farther, though, we have Duskendale, and this is where we get the why aren't we marching west bit. Everything about this Duskendale scene is grim. It's super well done. It's like a 2-minute scene, but the vibe is overwhelmingly dark. Hey, appropriate. It's House Darklyn. But they're the ones suffering the darkness here. The music, the setting, overcast weather, the overall vibe, the way Criston just walks along the line of men as they slowly kneel after he cuts their lord's head off. It's so ominous, and it just shows how caught between, again, a rook and a hard place these men are. They really have no choice. It's like, die now or suffer a lot and probably die later. Like, oh, what a great choice.
There's a really a certain way that Criston walks away from that beheading, that the acting from him, like the way his body language and how he walks away, he does it with such a smooth motion. You know what I mean? Like, it's like he chops the head off and normally you would expect someone to chop a head off and wait a beat. It's like he chops it, and by the time he's finished swinging, he's already walking away and on to the next beat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. You're right. That adds to it. You're right. I kind of struggle putting it into words. What about this scene? Because it's so many different little things that make it so dark. But that is a good point. Like his body language, just his swagger. It's a dark swagger.
It's something I've been thinking about for a lot of these characters. It was something that was really congealing last episode, that Rhaenyra was finally accepting, okay, that's it, we're going to war. And, once you make that realization, you change your attitude about it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of what Laris was checking for with Alicent. And I think in a way I think I said that last week when she said that there was no mistake. About how she interpreted Aegon's dream or whatever. In that moment, I was like, there's no mistake because we're doing everything on purpose. We have to. We're at war. We can't question our decisions or feel bad about it. Everything we decide has to be correct. It can't
full
be
commitment.
A mistake. That makes sense. Right. And I think that Rhaenyra is at that point now. And I think Cole has been at that point on the battlefield for weeks. And he is just a cold-blooded robot killer now. I think it's
and it changed him. But then after the Rook's Rest, that maybe has changed him even more because it's not what he expected. But we'll get to that in a minute. But I think that was really good point there, Sean. Really good take. One of the other things that's ominous about this is Gwaine Hightower has blood on his face and he says nothing. He jokes always. It's like the only time he hasn't joked or needled Cole. I mean, he did needle him about which direction they're marching, but that was a little later, So it's just like some of that Night of Summer vibe is falling off of Gwaine Hightower here. He's getting hardened fast by being in a real war and seeing some nasty, bloody brutality. Like, this is worse than it looks. This is a thriving port town. If it's one of the closest population centers to being a city that isn't quite a city, and it was sacked. You could see the smoke billowing up. Not only does this imply innocent people were robbed, if not killed, Lord Darkland just says that's what happened. He's like, you're sacking, he calls it one of your queen cities. He's still stubborn about who's actually in charge here. He's like, he still says the queen. He's like, no, you're no, that's the king.
You're lucky for this death as a traitor.
Yeah.
Is what Cole tells him, right? Yeah.
Can I say, I really liked it being a Darkland who insults Kristen and calls him Kingmaker again here and all that, right? Because House Darkland is known for being a house that has provided the most Kingsguard knights, including, of course, Steffan Darkland himself. So, of course, he's all in on Rhaenyra right now. But traditionally, they're a Kingsguard house. And for him to insult him and the Kingsguard was very meaningful.
Good point. There's really no one that could say you're not worthy of the white cloak. And this is a guy who was just complaining about their purity and talking to Arik and how he got him to go to Dragonstone. So he cuts off his head in response, he executes him, spits at his foot, calls him Kingmaker. Kingmaker, by the way, that's how he's remembered. That's his nickname that's carried forward. He's called Kingmaker in A Song of Ice and Fire. And you mentioned Steffan Darkland and the Kingsguard. Yes, they do have the most Kingsguard knights of all time. That hadn't necessarily been established at this point, but they'd already had 3 at this point. They've already had 3 knights in the Kingsguard at this era. I don't think anyone else has had 2. And they end up with having 7 by the time of modern times. So then Aerys wipes out the whole house. So there are no more Darklands, so they're not going to get an 8th. But anyway.
Appropriate.
Yeah.
7's the full number.
So even Visenya didn't sack Duskendale during the conquest. She let them she took their money, but she didn't sack it. She's just like, you give me the money. To be fair, it wasn't civil war. It was the conquest, so there was still, Anyway, so that's that. Really dark, really grim, really well done scene. And most of the men who haven't been killed, they see their lord executed, and they're like, well, join or die. I guess we'll join. So Steffan Darkland learns of the fate of his birthplace and his father right when Rhaenyra and him return from their little commando mission there. But the moment is lost. He puts his hands on the table. He's overcome. But Jace immediately is like, where have you been? And so that gets kind of pushed to the side.
Yeah, it was a little inappropriate how he did it, but it really speaks to how he's like, I need to know. I can't wait any longer. He is impatient.
There's another example. That's a perfect example of the impatience. Yeah. So, yes. You should have maybe given that man a minute,
or even 30 seconds.
Yeah. More than 2 seconds, which is, yeah. So Rhaenyra thinks to surprise them. She's like, all right, they think I'm slow and sluggish and afraid to send a dragon. Watch this. But Cole knew she would do that. So this is why I'm like, yeah, it was a pretty good plan by Cole. He knew. And he also figured out probably which dragon they would send. Because the same process of elimination that arrived at them sending Meleys, he could figure that out. They're not going to send Jace. They're not going to send Rhaenyra. And they're not going to send Little Moondancer. And who else is there? That's literally it.
You reminded me of a point that I wanted to make. I'm pretty sure it was last week when they went back and forth between the councils. There were several times when someone said they will come to the same conclusion. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Each council said that of the other council. I think Aegon said it when he was like, it's war, and they're like, they're feuding anyway. This isn't war. And Aegon's like, no, I'm calling it war, and they're going to call it war too.
Yeah, that was one of the few times he was right. Yeah, he was right about that. Yeah.
And I wish I remember it, but Rhaenyra made some. Oh, she was like, we can't send dragon on dragon. It's going to be too destructive. We can't do that, and they'll come to the same conclusion.
Yeah,
and they sort of had. They did not expect it to be dragon. Well, I guess they did. I guess they expected to be dragging a dragon here.
They expected Rhaenyra to finally break that because that was their only choice. Yeah. Like there's no land army for them to assault with, and a sea army, that'd be crazy. Sending ships, like not only would that break their blockade because they already don't have enough ships for the blockade, but that just makes it vulnerable to a dragon. So like ships are the worst thing to send against a dragon.
Even expecting it, quote unquote, to be dragon on dragon, they still wanted it to be a surprise dragon attack on dragon, right?
Yes.
They still hid Vhagar, you know.
Yes.
Even when they decided, all right, we're gonna have to use a dragon to fight a dragon, they still were careful and sneaky about how they did it.
Yeah, and they can be sure, like, and this is the thing, it's a win-win. If they're wrong and they send no dragons, okay, no big deal. They win Rook's Rest, they punish the Black Council, they accomplish all those other goals. They just don't accomplish goal 4, ambush and kill one of the queen's dragons. If they get really lucky, Rhaenyra actually does come. They're like, holy crap, she actually came. They kill her, and then they're like, yay. If they send 2 dragons, well, Vhagar could take 2 dragons, because Meleys and, like it would be dangerous if it was Meleys and Syrax. That would be. But then they could just go, okay, you can have Rook's Rest back. We'll back off and fight another day. I don't know if they would have, but they would at least have that option. So that's why the plan is good, because like almost every outcome, even if some things go wrong, they can still book a victory. The problem was they baited a trap for a dragon and Sunfire came. Aegon took the bait. It's like, oh shoot, that's not what we want.
We've long talked about, like, well, do we think 2 smaller dragons could fight a big dragon in different contexts? Not just in the Dance of the Dragons, but just like, we talk about, like, something attacking Balerion or whatever, right? We're talking about Maegor in the past. Having seen this fight, my money would be on Vhagar. Even with Syrax and Meleys versus Vhagar, I don't know. Like, having seen it, if I'm betting on the biggest dragon.
I disagree, and this is why I'll tell you. Because this was sort of like Vhagar and Sunfire versus Meleys, right? This wasn't like this was the biggest dragon and another dragon versus one dragon, not 2 versus the one big dragon. Does that make sense? Like Meleys was injured and distracted already when she started fighting Vhagar.
But so she didn't really touch. She didn't really.
It might have been a closer match, and if she had a second dragon there helping her. I still think it's at least close.
Let me add
something to this.
Damaged Vhagar very much. I think if Vhagar hadn't been trying to like let Sunfire get messed up, it would have been very different.
There's a few things in here that y'all need to take into account, I think, that affect this discussion. One is Rhaenys specifically wasn't trying to kill the riders.
Yeah,
that is stated behind the scenes. She still didn't want to kill her nephews. If she was trying to kill the riders, it's a completely.
She was avoiding fire in general,
right? Because she didn't want to
kill innocent people on the ground.
Well, no, she shot a lot of fire on the ground.
She doesn't care about the small folk. We've all known
that's
that.
established.
She doesn't seem to care at all.
Anyway, let me continue. So she wasn't trying to kill her nephews, but if the dragon riders are actually trying to kill each other and not the dragons, it changes the game. Because if you do have a small dragon that's maneuverable, it's entirely possible that you could kill the rider without getting close to the big dragon. It's risky, but that is what she tried to do. Meleys, that is how she tried to win, by outmaneuvering Vhagar. It just didn't work. Let me explain it further. So let's get a little deeper into the battle because we skipped over a few things. So first of all, Cole's like all excited about his plan. He's like, can't wait, and Gwaine Hightower's like, why are we attacking in daylight? Like, the Blackwater Bay is right there, bro. A dragon could show up any second. We wouldn't be able to do anything about it. He's like, they won't expect it. He's like, they won't expect it because it's insane, And he's like, what, are you afraid? And he uses that same line that we always love to say works so well in Westeros. What, are you afraid? But Gwaine has the best response ever. Worse, I'm rational. I love that. It's like, yes, more people should say that to what are you scared? They need that response, but not everyone is as quippy and ready with a response as Gwaine Hightower. So Rhaenys shows up and he's like, send the signal, and Gwaine Hightower's like, what signal? This is a great way of making the audience know. It's like emphasizing what's happening. Gwaine Hightower is the audience. He asks all the questions the audience would want. Like, so this was your plan? Have Aegon? He's like, no, it's not my plan. And that's the moment at which Criston Cole switches from Hand of the King to Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. He ceases to care about the battle and only cares about Aegon's life because he's like, oh crap, This guy has no idea what he's doing. He knows Aegon is incompetent. He's probably already guessed that he's drunk if he thought about it for a second. It's like, that kid's probably drunk, because he's always drunk. But what can he do? Like, I'll ride up there and he can't do anything. So, yeah. And if we back up even farther to build the sadness for all this, yeah, you've got the preparation when they get ready to launch. Like, Rhaenys looking at Meleys with her cool, like, tiara thing that I feel like is some piece of old Valyrian jewelry. It's gotta be.
I think it's Baratheon. It has antlers on it.
Oh, does it really?
I think it's a new piece of headwear that's meant to like represent her Targaryen and Baratheon.
Well, color me wrong then. That sounds that you're probably right. Oh, you know what? Now her hair is black. She's got a little black thing on it, right? No, that's cool though. No, I like that. Appreciate her showing her Baratheon heritage there. And then Aegon, of course, is got his dragon, and Sunfire boops him. It's another little way to humanize the dragon right before they wreck it, just to make us sad. So both of the dragons are shown to kind of love their riders and vice versa. Vhagar, we don't see the preparation there. We just see see her hiding in the trees, maybe a mile or two away. I saw some people complaining about this, like, how could you conceal a dragon? It's like, the forest is, like, massive. It's, like, square miles. Yeah. Like, yes, this is a big-ass dragon, but do you have any idea how large forests are?
All those shots of the dragons in the air flying, swooping down, there's just, like, a sea of tree to the horizon. Like,
and she's green.
I don't... Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't see... That's not far-fetched in the slightest to me. Like,
it might be hard to hide from satellite imagery, but it's not hard to hide from soldiers in a castle 2 miles away.
They aren't... who are all hiding in the castle. They're terrified of this army, so they're not going anywhere, but, they're all hiding in... There's no way they'd see this dragon. So... Why didn't the Blacks send multiple dragons? Why didn't the Greens do that possibility? We covered that. I think they both know each other's capabilities. Like, neither side has a lot of dragons, even though there's a lot of riderless dragons. But as far as the dragons and dragon riders, both sides know exactly what the other side's arsenal looks like. And it can put out a reasonable guess as to who they're willing to risk and not. So, they're not likely to send Rhaenyra. They're not likely to send Jace. Just like, we're not likely to send Aegon. Oops, So they're not going to send Moondancer. Like, she's tiny, and they saw her. They saw how tiny she was. Like, that would have been enough to kill them on there were 6 guys on their horses, but they're not going to. They've already established not wanting to send her into battle either, basically. So all right, the battle begins. I love how it's done. It gets very thick very quickly with the Song of Ice and Fire voiceover, and it gets worse really fast. Those poor soldiers, they're just like, there's nothing we can do here. We're just back, forward, up, down. Everything is killing us. And just as Aemond is about to join the battle and spring the trap, Sunfire flies overhead, and Aemond is like, idiot. He says it in High Valyrian, though, because,
I really liked that he said it in High Valyrian. I'm picturing, like, Aemond's inner monologue is all in High Valyrian or whatever. Or I like it even more, the idea that he said it in High Valyrian so Vhagar would understand him, because Vhagar doesn't know English.
I like that.
And, like, I also have seen a lot of talk from Ewan Mitchell, talking about calling Vhagar this older she-dragon and comparing it to, Aemond, having some, like for older women and mommy issues. Like, he finds it very resonant.
That's funny.
Yeah, he thinks it's very resonant that his dragon is an older she-dragon, as he calls it, and the closest, closest connection he has
is Sylvie,
he's saying the closest connection he has is to this older she-dragon, Vhagar, and this older woman, Sylvie, and mommy issues.
That's hilarious. So he tells Vhagar to sit back down, and I love the exhale from her nose that just shoots all the plants downward, and the force of her neck hitting the ground just when she just flops, which sets up just how much the wings beating and the landing later, how much of a concussive force that creates, which is just great.
Now, I think there's some intentional ambiguity through this, but it's worth noting that he saw the signal already. Cole already sent the signal. He's supposed to be coming helping in a battle. Then he sees Aegon and then tells Vhagar to hold on. Wait a minute, let's not go yet.
Oh, I agree. He's adjusting that. He wasn't delaying this. I don't think I agree that he was delaying the signal. He started moving right away. And then he saw Sunfire and stopped and backed off.
Right, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Which I think is he giving Aegon a chance to get killed on his own?
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I don't see any other possible interpretation. Because if he wants to stop his brother from getting killed, he takes off right away. He's like, oh, I better not let this happen. So I don't think he's like, oh, I'll stand aside and let him have the glory. I don't think that's it.
There is another possibility.
Okay, what is it?
If he takes off immediately, Rhaenys might have just left. If she immediately saw 2 dragons are coming for her, she might have left.
Good
He
point.
wanted to make sure to get Rhaenys. He wanted to make sure, so he's got to get her engaged first. Aegon might die. Hey, that's his stupid fault. But
that's a very good point. Okay, yeah, she might leave. He doesn't know that she's willing to stay and fight. As it turns out, that wasn't something he could predict.
Yeah, I think it's a little both, Sean. I think he went. It's like, he's like, okay, clearly the best option for me is either I get lucky and my stupid brother dies and I become the king potentially, right? Or he lures Rhaenys and gets her locked in combat, and then I take her. Like, it's clearly the right choice for a few reasons. He's willing to lose his brother. In fact, maybe happy and looking to lose his brother. And
the only way it's not the right choice is if he cared about saving his brother's life.
Very good breakdown there. So Aegon arrives at the battlefield. He can see Meleys in the distance, and you can't say he's not brave. That's what
he
it's
looks so scared, though.
He does look a little scared. He does. Look at that face. He does. You're right.
Be brave.
Yeah. He had liquid courage, and his lack of high Valyrian arrives with him. It's funny how even his dragon doesn't have a Valyrian name, and there's Meleys and Vhagar and
Sunfire. It's another Spanglish ass name, right? Like,
to be fair, Aemond and Rhaenys didn't name Meleys and Vhagar, but still, the point stands. So yeah, they're giving these cool, sexy commands like Angos, Meleys, and Umbas, Vhagar. With their rolling R's and their cool, sexy accent. He's like, forward, Sunfire, faster. I love the consistency there. And then he's just like, it's how he responds to everything. He just wants to run straight at it and smash it. That's how he responds to problems and things he doesn't like or disagrees with. But and this is the one Valyrian command he knows, Dracarys, but he does it too soon. He unleashes a gout of flame too soon, like I said, and Meleys dives below it. And then when the flame clears up, he's like, where'd she go? That's why you don't do that. That's why you don't just run right at it and shoot flame, because they now know you can't see them and they'll take advantage of that. So it's unclear whether Rhaenys immediately took advantage of that, steered the dragon below the flame, and then came around and into his blind spot to attack from below, because he's like looking around afterwards and is like, and just comes right in the one spot he's not looking. So I feel like this is basic dragon rider maneuvering, and she knows he's got no experience. Now, book Rhaenys doesn't actually have any battle experience. Meleys does. So maybe show Rhaenys actually does have some battle experience, because she looked like she knew what she was doing and had a plan and choices that she had made ahead of time, moral choices about who to kill and what to do and what she was willing to do and etc.
I imagine she, like Aemond and some of the other characters, even if they don't have actual experience, still read the books, made the studies, paid attention to their teachers. Yep. Aegon did not, right? And she might have got, probably not against another dragon, but some experience maybe on the patrolling the blockade. There might have been some moments where arrows were fired or she swooped down to burn a ship or something. I can see some sort of experience coming there.
Yeah, and this is almost certainly the first sort of action Aegon has seen at all, right? Like by contrast. So yeah, I totally agree with you there. And also, she's not drunk. But I think just letting her dragon's instincts take over might be a big part of it here. The dragon knows, like, these are animals that live in the skies. They have a better sense of the 3D environment that they're in than a human does.
So yeah, attack better than fire.
Yes, right. Yeah, let it make its own choices rather than just shoot flames straight ahead, which it can go in any direction to avoid that. Up, down, left, right. It's really not a good idea. But again, though, that's not just his experience. He's afraid, right? Like you said, he's forced himself to be there because he thinks he should be, not because it's a good idea. And he's just, I agree with you, Shay. It's like, and I agree with you too, Sean. Like, he's a horrible rapist, but I still feel bad for him,
Yeah. I'm with you there. I think some people might call me like an apologist or whatever, but I do think like he was a young boy raised in a certain type of culture. And yeah, I don't think he's a good guy. I don't think any of these people are frankly good. I don't think Rhaenys is that good either. I think she just killed a whole bunch of people, right?
Yeah, she may be better, but that doesn't make her good.
Yeah, like
right?
she's not raping people, but I still think she still kills people. So like I don't know like what your morals are, whatever, but like he was a young boy and taught that he was able to do whatever he wanted. So like I do feel for him in that he was raised a certain kind of way and was made that way. I don't think that Aegon was born evil and bad, you know? Like so that's where I feel for him. And he does still have a close connection with a creature, which I think all of us humans find that to be something that makes our heart hurt when we see like this animal human connection and we see that like split and we see their commitment to one another, and it really hits us hard, and it worked for me.
Yeah. I mean, you feel bad for the dragons, yeah.
I want it. Part of me wants to feel bad for him, but part of me does a little bit. But keep in mind, he's not just a rapist. He also just hung all those rat catchers, right? He's a murderer. He's so irresponsible in so many ways, and a lot of it, maybe you can chalk it up to his poor upbringing. Maybe he wasn't born evil, but Aemond isn't doing that stuff. Helena's not doing that stuff. None of those kids got a good upbringing.
Well, to be fair, Helena was not. I don't think it's fair to make the male-female dichotomy here, because men in Westeros are taught to be violent and aggressive. Women are taught to be the opposite. So it's specifically not her upbringing, because she was taught the opposite.
Maybe she's a bad example, but there's still Aemond is still there.
Well, he has all sorts of other problems.
Aemond's more likely to reach to kill someone, right? Like, or maybe more likely than Aegon, but as likely as Aegon.
But what I'll follow up with saying is I do feel bad for the dragons. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you're a kind, noble, generous person or an evil, murderous rapist. If you capture a tiger and make it fight another tiger, I feel bad for the tigers.
Yeah, that's not on the tiger. That's on the humans. Yeah. Absolutely. That's the humans.
And the kind, generous, noble person is probably not capturing tigers to make them fight each other either. So
probably not.
I feel bad for these dragons that are being forced into killing each other because of these selfish, greedy, immoral, whatever dragon riders.
Yeah, absolutely. So another thing to keep in mind here is that even with the commands that they're issuing, Angos, Dracarys, etc., they can't be too precise. Like when you say attack to a dragon, you're not, how does it know if there's, like in the case of Vhagar, which dragon is he attacking? When you say, like, attack that one, he can't tell him which dragon to attack. You say attack in a direction that it's already pointed, and it attacks the thing that it's seeing. If there's two dragons, which dragon will it attack? Will it attack them both? So that's just something to keep in mind here. And so when he's looking around for Meleys, Sunfire is, and emerges from behind and grabs on, and it's brutal. The damage they do to each other, the ripping of flesh and screaming and bellowing. In these moments, the riders become almost irrelevant. Can you imagine a command being issued at this point? What would it do? Like the dragons are stuck together because they might not even be able to hear it. So Sunfire almost hits the ground. You can see the power of their wings it creates a rush on the ground, and the acidic black blood falls from these huge gaping wounds from Meleys' talons and burns a soldier. It's terrifying.
Maybe boiling blood even, right?
Yes, hot, boiling, acidic blood. It might be
200 degrees, yeah.
Yeah, that dude's screwed. So they re-engage, though. Meleys attacks again, clearly superior to Sunfire. Again, not trying to burn the rider off his back, trying to kill the dragon. Very crucial here. And as they're still locked in, where Sunfire is clearly losing badly, Aegon sees Vhagar approach and thinks he's been saved. It's this great ominous moment that they've done with Vhagar a few times where she slowly emerges above whatever she's behind, whether it's Storm's End or a cloud or the tree line here. And he's like, oh, I've been saved. Thank the gods. But then there's this slow build of Vhagar's open maw and the flames billowing inside. And he realizes, uh-oh. And he screams. He's like, no. And you can see that Ashea has this moment perfectly captured when he's screaming. And so Aemond can't be precise here, but he's clearly not worried about what happens to his brothers. Like, whatever happens, happens, bro. Like, I gotta get this. I gotta get Rhaenys here, Now, Meleys is older, so her scales are more impervious to flame. So maybe they took an equal brunt of it, and she just came off easier because she's more resistant to it.
Yeah, I would think she's more resistant, and I would say that obviously Vhagar's flame is hotter than the hottest of the dragon flames, right?
Yeah. So this
and probably has the longest range too. He can
Probably.
fire from farther away and hit. Like if they do the head-on rush, Vhagar is going to win that because the blast will get there first. Probably they won't do that because they're smart enough, like you said, to dive underneath or whatever.
Yeah.
One other note I want to make, if you were going to defend Aemond here, is that Aegon might just be dead either way, right? Like if he just ignores this and lets him just keep falling, Aegon might just be dead anyway. So he might as well take out Rhaenys and Meleys while he can. And if it kills my brother too, oh well, but he's dead anyway.
That's kind of the point I was making with the precision of commands. If he says attack, what does Vhagar do? Does he attack? How does he know who Vhagar's going to attack there? There's two dragons balled together. Like, how does Vhagar know which one is friend and which one is foe? She doesn't.
I have a sort of a counterpoint to that, because they have some sort of psychological bond. I don't know if it's purely a word that's said that they understand and follow. I think there's some amount of emotional connection there. Martin in this world has been very vague with it. But remember when Emma died in season 1 and they had the funeral, and was it Syrax?
Yes.
Burned the pyre, but there were just people all over for
That's
this
a good
funeral ceremony.
point. Yeah.
And Rhaenyra was like Dracarys, and it walked over and burned just the pyre. So there's some understanding of the command. Maybe that's like a traditional routine they've gone through before that Syrax somehow knew. But how many times could that have happened? I don't know how many Targaryens die. So
it's definitely a gray area as to what where the precision, the line lies. Yeah.
Even if Vhagar did exactly specifically understand attack Meleys, he is not able to. They're all intertwined, spinning around and falling. So yeah,
good point. So Sunfire gets the worst of it, whether or not our bit about flames and resistance to the flames is accurate. I think it probably is. Either way, Sunfire's wings are burning, can't stay aloft, plunges to the earth into the tree line, crashes down. It's kind of an explosion, which says to me, and same thing happens to Meleys. It says to me that there's fire like combusting inside them, getting ready to be unleashed, and when they...
Oh, I didn't see it like that.
Yeah, I mean...
I saw it as them breathing fire.
Breathing fire as they land?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's too scattered.
Yeah. I also thought that there was some sort of...
Because Meleys hits...
internal...
I thought it was two different things happening
gases
here.
that got released.
That's how I see it.
Within himself. But when they fall and it's all pushed out of their neck and their mouth.
In Sunfire's case, I thought as Sunfire was lit on fire and was still on fire.
That wouldn't cause an explosion, though. Like, look at that. Like the picture you have on screen now, it's like it goes whoosh.
Came up as he hit the ground.
That wouldn't cause an explosion.
I would say the chemicals, would react to the fire, but there was already fire. Like, I don't think they formed fire out of nothing. I'm saying fire was there.
I'm not saying it formed out of nothing.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Okay.
I'm saying that there was fire already there, and that's how the Sunfire one happened.
Well, that doesn't explain Meleys then.
That's my question. Is why I was saying that if Meleys had fire.
I don't think so. She plummeted. They showed her plummet earthward. She was dead. Like, remember, her light went out in her eyes. There's no way to breathe fire. She's dead already, right?
Oh, true.
So so I think what is happening is like you're saying the flames. Some of the flames were already there, but what I think is happening is the oxygen is what causes the flames to burst in the first place. There's some sort of chemical composition inside them that when it meets oxygen, that's what causes the combustion. Because fire is fueled by oxygen in the first place. So we don't have to try to explain fantasy dragon fire, but that's how I attempt to explain it anyway. It's not super important. So Sunfire crashed into the trees. Criston Cole goes running in that direction. Because remember, like I said, he has now become Lord Commander of the Kingsguard again and is no longer thinking about the battle all that much. He's kind of stopped paying attention to it. He's just really concerned about Aegon.
I want to make a point, though, but before that moment, I think you're right. He has realized I got to protect Aegon, but he didn't abandon everything else, because first he did make this impassioned speech. He called all the troops forward, like, your king is here.
Oh, yeah.
The 7 are with us. Everyone advance. It changed the strategy, and he kind of wanted to put everyone into motion, maybe so that he could then leave that leadership role and go find Aegon. And also maybe on some level to protect Aegon, because the dragons got to, if in some level they're there to
more distraction
battle, they got to pay attention to the soldiers in the castle, not just the dragon, But I want to give him some credit as a leader. Admittedly, I'm a Cole apologists. Or
Oh no,
whatever,
I'm on your side here, Cole. I mean, I'm not defending I'm never defending his personality, but he had a good plan here. It just got bollocksed up by his own king.
And I think that he did a good job in the heat of an awful moment, juggling his different priorities and responsibilities. I think he handled it all very well with an incredible.
Yeah, I'm not complaining that he switched from hand to Lord Commander. It's just clearly his priority shifted when he realized his very drunk, very silly. Minded king is in the area, and becomes the priority.
And I agree his priority shifted, but I just want to give him some credit for not immediately abandoning one responsibility for the other.
Well, to be fair, he couldn't have. Like, again, we pointed out, what could he have done? Like, Aegon's up in the air. What can he possibly do? Anyway, right. Yeah. So he crashed into the trees. He goes rushing towards that, and in the meantime, the Meleys and Vhagar come together, and since Cole, like you said, he makes the charge, the impassioned speaks, he yells advance. I love how he said advance. It was really like, whoa, he practiced that one.
Yeah, technically he comes to after Meleys is dead.
Yeah, he wakes up, because this battle knocks him unconscious, and he wakes up and he's like, oh my God. So everyone kind of stops to watch. Like, no one's even battling anymore. No troops are trying to reach the castle wall anymore. As far as I can tell, they've all kind of run back. And other troops on the wall are like transfixed by the dragons, and since there's no troops, the assault on the castle has abated. There's nothing much for them to do. There's not very many soldiers in bowshot anymore.
Did you get the impression that Aemond was looking for Aegon? Like, he was like, oh, obviously Rhaenys will immediately leave now that she's seen this. And, like, any smart person would leave, right? So he goes immediately to go look for Aegon, I think, to go handle that loose end. And then he turns around and he's like, what an idiot.
Yeah,
he's like,
coming back.
Coming back. Okay, I'll go do this.
She was, I think you're right. I think that's a very good point, a very good take, and very likely, because, I think he's like, because that was part of why he was like, God, this is all being screwed up. We're not going to get to kill her after all. And and she does. She, like, it does look like she's leaving. And she kind of, like, breathes in. She's like, nope, I got to go back. And she kind of has that, like, this is it kind of look on her face. I think
that happened twice, and I think it was really powerful.
It was really powerful.
Yeah, I felt like one of the major factors there was she realizes what a menace Aemond on Vhagar is, and she's like, if I have any chance at stopping this in its tracks, I should sacrifice myself. Again, I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think she did the calculus of seeing how it simplifies things for Corlys mainly, and hopefully clears the path for Rhaenyra if Vhagar and Aemond are out of the way. It's worth it to her, right? Like, I don't think it's stupid. I think she knows she's very likely to die, but if she at least takes out Vhagar, it's worth it. Yeah,
I totally agree. I don't think it's stupid at all. I mean, like we said, like, she did have a chance to win there. It wasn't like it was by no means a foregone conclusion. She was the underdog, but by no means, like you said, it could have resulted in both dragons dying, which is not an uncommon result when two dragons clash. Like, she could have, even if she didn't kill Vhagar, she might have crippled Vhagar.
Yeah. Even if she could just take a wing out and he can't fly anymore, he could still be a significant battlefield piece, but he has to walk there. He can't just fly.
Vhagar's a she, yeah.
Vhagar can't just, in one day, be anywhere in Westeros almost,
Yeah, that's a huge deal. Like, then
slowly with the whole,
she really would just be stuck at King's Landing guarding it in that sense, but but that would be a very effective deterrent, as it was when she had wings. I mean, she does still have wings, but in this scenario where she doesn't. Anyway, so everyone's like, with everyone stopping to watch, you get to see the great overhead shot of the dragons coming together. So I think what happens here is Meleys / Rhaenys is baiting Vhagar into a headlong charge. Like, I'm going to do this. And Vhagar's like, all right, we're going straight at each other. And then she tries to dive below. And what I think she's going to try to do is circle around and attack before Vhagar can turn, hoping that Vhagar is going to not be able to turn as quickly, which is a reasonable guess. Vhagar is going to turn slower, but it doesn't work. It looks like Vhagar either anticipates this or Meleys just doesn't realize how long Vhagar's reach is. Like, those claws shoot way out and grab them. From the BTS, they say that they were trying to emulate real life birds of prey who, when they fight, they look like this. They lock their talons and do the circle of death, spiraling down until it's almost like a game of chicken, which is appropriate since chickens are birds, but they don't fly.
A game of eagle.
A game of eagle, they don't fly very well. So eagle's better. And so that makes sense for the strategy for Meleys to take, to try to go. She might like, oh, she's going to expect me to go high because I can come back down and get the rider, and the rider's vulnerable. So she's like, oh, I'll go under instead, and they won't see that coming. But I don't know, Vhagar was just old and wise, or I'm not sure. It just didn't work either way. So they lock talons. Meleys gets the worst of it, being smaller, but she gets in a few good licks there. Like the flames are going back and forth, and neither one is doing a whole lot of damage with the fire and things, but the ripping of the neck and the tearing of the belly happens, and Vhagar is clearly severely wounded, but not enough to stop flying or anything like that. So they almost hit the ground. Meleys' greater maneuverability seems to come up big here, and she's able to like pull up right at that appropriate moment in the spiral that causes Vhagar to come crashing down, hits the ground. The piece of luck for Vhagar and Aemond is that it kicks up an enormous dust cloud, that's not luck. That's going to happen no matter what. That's been well established. Mm-hmm. But she's facing the cliff face. So that's why she just immediately starts running. And of course, we get this in a very interesting piece of filmmaking with Kristen Cole getting knocked unconscious. It's black for a second. He wakes up, and it's slow-mo Vhagar stomping, crushes a few soldiers, maybe a little bit of a callback to Caraxes crushing one of Daemon's own men back in episode 3, season 1.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you thought that was a big dragon
Yeah.
foot?
There's 2 people crushed under this foot, and you definitely could have fit another couple under that. And so that's why she's able to get aloft again so quickly, which Rhaenys was not expecting, because she just jumps right off that cliff face. She runs towards the cliff face, dives off of it, which is more than enough room to get aloft again. And then she stays below the cliff face out of sight. And that's when Rhaenys is searching around and looking, and then, yeah, it's maybe slightly contrived. It's a little perfect, but I buy it because of she can't see beyond the cliff face. She can't see down there.
Aemond and Vhagar have one move, and it's the surprise.
Giant surprise.
Yeah.
By the way, take note of I switched my posters out. I've got the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Hidden Dragon! Fair enough. You even talked about a tiger today, too.
That's right.
You did. Yeah, you're covering all your bases. Next, you got to mention a Jimi Hendrix somehow, because that's the other poster you have. Like, I don't know how Jimi Hendrix fits into this conversation, but you're up to the challenge, Sean. So
these dragons were kissing the sky.
Hey, yeah, you did it. That took you 2
Use
seconds. So she comes shortly after. She's searching around. Vhagar emerges. It's pretty clever, pretty good ambush. You know, I'm cool with it. Like I said, I think it works pretty well. Vicious, just brutal. Like, oh no! And the way she's got her jaws clamped on Meleys' neck, and the light slowly goes out of her eyes. It's just heartbreaking. Great way to show the dragon's last moments. Just like, and then Rhaenys just gives herself up to the void, lets go, and falls and crashes upside down. It's pretty clear that she's gone. She was under it.
Yeah.
I appreciated that she attached herself. She latched herself to Meleys. She said, she was like, I'm going to be with my dragon until the very end, right?
Yeah, I thought that was indicative. Yeah, she's all in on this.
Yeah.
And I was more sad watching it the second time, because the first time, it's so much to take in, like just the visual spectacle of it all. Just my mind often thinks about like the filmmaking efforts to make all this happen, and just the implications of this battle, and on and on and on. But then the second time, I was like, oh, I kind of like realized that she was like looking back, that Meleys was looking back at Rhaenys, and as she's dying, her neck, and oh man, it was so sad.
Peter H. Kwok says, why couldn't Rhaenys and Meleys die heroically defending the castle instead of implausibly not noticing Vhagar? Contrived deaths are for GOT seasons 4 to 8. Well, I'm sorry, Peter, I just don't agree with you there. She did die heroically defending the castle. And I do not think that was contrived. I think that maybe it was lucky that Vhagar was coming back up around the cliff or waiting for that, but contrived? No. She
was looking. Peter H. Kwok added another super chat and said, "There's no reason not to check that Vhagar's dead."
That's exactly what she was doing.
She was trying to scout. She's trying to look around. I don't know that there was a better strategy she could have done here? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that there's a place she could have gone to find Vhagar without Vhagar finding her first.
She was definitely looking for him. They show her scanning the ground. They show her looking at the ground, like looking. She sees the impact
she
site
above too. Even.
Yeah, she's looking everywhere. She's looking at the impact site, looking around, and she doesn't consider that he could have jumped off, like could have taken off the cliff and come back around that way.
She might have even considered that. Here's a couple thoughts I have. Is it one quote unquote smarter thing she could have done was not have been so low to the ground when she crossed over.
Oh yeah, I do agree with that. Yes.
However, the reason she was so low to the ground because she was checking to see if Vhagar was dead. She had to be low enough to see him on the ground.
Also a fair point.
And then even when she did cross over the castle and a cliff, he could have been 100 yards left or right. She didn't expect him to. Now, maybe that was lucky or contrived for Vhagar to have come up right there, but it's also possible that Vhagar farther out saw, like got over the cliff, was turning, and could see the trajectory that Rhaenys was on, dipped back down below out of her sight, and timed it to come up as she crossed over.
That is one I definitely considered that same exact idea, and I think it's very plausible. So there's a multiple explanations here. We don't necessarily know which one is right, but with multiple explanations, I just don't see how we can call it contrived. Maybe a little implausible, but what do we know about dragon warfare and aerial combat anyway? None of us really know what we're talking about here.
Yeah, here's something we like to say on our show sometimes, which is when you're trying to think about whether something's a plot hole, whether it's contrived or what have you, can you take a moment and think about an explanation for how that could have happened? If you can think of one, maybe there's more than one even, right? Like, I encourage everyone, anytime you think something is a plot hole, you might just not like it. If you actually think about it for a beat, you probably can think of some explanations, and that's pretty regular.
Well said. And you're right. And to add to that, not liking it is 100% valid. You don't need any reason. No one ever needs to defend their choice not to like something. Just say, I don't like it, period. You can explain why, but it is not necessary. Your opinion is valid about whether you like something, whether you give reasons, or one reason, 100 reasons, or 0 reasons.
Sometimes I'm able to, justify a plot hole, if you will, when I think about the idea of, this is what they needed to happen. And the way they did it might have had some flaw that bothers me, but is there some other way it could have happened, especially if that other way would have cost more money or taken more time, right? Like, I could see why they did it this way. Like, sure, maybe she could have flown over and he dives up and misses. And so then they wrap up in the sky and they fall and they shoot flames and you spend 7 more minutes to drag a battle. But I think that makes the whole thing less exciting if you keep dragging it on. Yeah. Vhagar needs to win. Vhagar won. Rhaenys put up a good fight, etc.
And Vhagar winning is, of course, the basic idea of Vhagar winning is more than plausible, just in general,
Exactly, yeah.
Anyway, Aftermath. It's kind of brief, and I think that's on purpose because they wanted to really focus on the tragedy and the fact that we are now in a world of dragon warfare, no longer a world of human warfare. So I think it was pretty clever to focus on Criston Cole, the most important war leader in this entire war, who isn't a dragon rider. Right? He is the number one war leader that doesn't ride a dragon.
He's arguably the number one war leader even among the dragon riders because he's also Hand of the King, right? Like, he's also Lord Grey. He has a lot of other roles.
Yeah. So it's a huge parallel to the other Queen Rhaenys, or the queen, rather than the queen who never was, the actual queen who was, Rhaenys, on Meraxes, even a similar named dragon. Rhaenys on Meraxes, Rhaenys on Meleys.
We saw it in this episode, perhaps, it seems.
Yeah, that might have been why they showed Meraxes. That's a very good point. And when Meraxes died with a bolt through the eye, like we said, she fell on the Hellholt and broke its wall open, which is exactly what happens here. So in Criston Cole's case, he's unconscious when the wall breaks. He was knocked out by the concussion of Vhagar hitting the ground, only wakes up after Meraxes hits the ground. But when he wakes up, you can hear that Gawain Hightower has taken charge. He's ordering troops in the background. He says, with me, into the breach. You can hear him give that order. And I'm pretty sure there's some deleted scenes here because when we watch the BTS, they are filming Gwaine Hightower like on his horse charging in that direction, and we saw none of that. So be on the lookout for those in the future. Because
can you point out what you noticed on Gwaine in the other shot? I'll put it up.
Awesome little detail on Gwaine when he's arguing with Kristen Cole about the plan. He's not wearing his armor yet. And he's got a couple of necklaces. One's a ring, which could mean anything. It could be a wedding band, maybe. But he's also got a little axe, which is the sign of the warrior. That is the and-all symbol of the warrior. So that's pretty cool. Nice little detail. Love those little details, y'all. So, and of course, as we said about the fire thing, there's so much fire after Melly's crashes into the ground. It's a pretty substantial amount there. Quite a bit all over. So more importantly then, Gwaine Hightower's initiative to lead the troops through the wall is Christian Cole's reaction, and we follow him throughout this whole aftermath. It's there's smoke and it's hard to see everything. He's disoriented. He's like breathing heavily. I think this is his best episode as an actor. Like it's full of range. His darkness, his concern for his king, and his just reaction to the battle, and his just physical and the way you said he carries himself in armor, like.
And he has
no wonder they cast this guy.
And he has a little bit of a smugness to him when he's talking to Gwaine, and he's like, "I do have a plan." You know, like he has a little bit of a humor and an element we often don't see for him because he often is lesser to other people, not really superior to them.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, he really shined in this one. I've really you and me have argued about Kristen Cole before, Sean, but I would never argue about Fabian Frankel.
Yeah. I was going to say, let's not forget how handsome he is.
That's another thing they decided to keep true from the books. Of course they always do that.
What about this guy? Really handsome too, huh?
Oh, man. So, wow, this was crazy. So, yeah, it is, like I said, it is symbolic, too. His disorientation is mixed with determination, but also helplessness. He wakes up into a new world. Like, he's unconscious when he wakes up. Everything has changed. It wasn't what he thought it would be. Like I said, this is an experienced warrior that has had to deal with a lot. He's not only dealt with battle, but he's had to deal with insubordination based on his birth and ethnicity. Like he's had to face that. He's dealing with a royal family that's highly dysfunctional. That dysfunction ruined his plan here, like directly. And now he's going to look bad for it. In some ways it won't be all his fault, but it's not going to look good. This completely incinerated banner bearer guy that Ashea had on the screen a minute ago, like, whoa. Like, that hits him hard. Like, that's not something he could have ever seen on a battlefield before. He couldn't have fathomed that was even possible.
I want to say a couple things here.
Yeah.
That scene actually bothered me a little bit more than the contrivedness or whatever of Vhagar coming up and catching Melees. And again, I'm nitpicking here, but that guy's body, like the flesh and bone of his body, how was that completely incinerated when the wooden banner he was carrying wasn't? That doesn't make sense.
Is that a wooden? It might be a metal thing.
Well,
but no,
there's cloth on the banner.
Yeah, there is cloth on the banner.
There's still cloth on the banner. I don't have a shot of it, but it bothered me too, Sean.
Yeah,
I was like, I was gonna roll my eyes. That's exactly the kind of thing where like, like that's a plot hole, and I can't think of any explanation.
Yeah.
They don't have.
I don't think it's a plot hole. It just doesn't make sense because it's not really plot.
Right, it doesn't affect the plot. It's just an inaccuracy.
Yeah, it's just over the top.
Yeah, something. But, over the top. Yeah.
So,
but the other thing, and I might be jumping ahead a little, but we're just giving props to Fabian Franco that
Frankel.
I was
Fabian Frankel.
Oh,
Fabian Frankel.
Yeah.
When he kind of drops to his knees there in front of Aegon, I'm just imagining all the things going through his head, right? Like, he's got to be torn in so many directions. Like we talked about, like his role, like sort of as a battlefield commander. Like I guess they won,
Yeah. Do they call this a victory?
Yeah. And but remember they said that about the
Battle of the Burning Mill.
The Rack and Blackwood battle too.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if we could count that as a victory. And I think. You know what? Did someone else say that it would be a Pyrrhic victory? Was that?
Yes. Well, they didn't. She didn't use the word Pyrrhic, but
okay, because I realized like there wouldn't be a Pyrrhic victory in Westeros.
No,
Ryan Condal used the phrase in the behind the scenes. They would never use it in the world, but he could use it.
Yeah, just like those dogs were apparently Irish wolfhounds, those 3 dogs at Harrenhal, but they clearly aren't Irish wolfhounds in world.
In that
right?
World, yeah. But just he's got to feel like he failed the king. He's gonna is he gonna lose his position as Lord Commander, or should he resign a position? How is the rest of the kingdom going to react to this? Is the war even going to keep going? He's got to have so many concerns, both on like a big picture strategy level, a tactics of the battle level, a personal emotional level, responsibility.
What's he going to tell Alicent?
Yeah, what's he going to tell Alicent? Oh, my. Oh, boy. Yeah, and I forgot about this, too, like his range of acting, like his shock and horror here. Does he...
And it's also worth noting that I think it was also Ryan Condal or someone in one of the behind-the-scenes things where they were trying to make the point that what they wanted to see here from the POV of Kristen Cole is representing the difference in the world now that the dragons have been unleashed.
Mm-hmm. Not a world he thought he'd be in, not a world he imagined it, but he didn't know it would be like this. No one could. Like even the dragon riders haven't lived through this before.
Yeah.
So when he first walks up, when we first saw the scene, we thought Aemond had his sword out getting ready to finish Aegon, but on rewatch, it's like, no, that's definitely not the case, because he's putting his sword away before Cole yells anything.
Okay, I have something I noticed here I want to say real quick. So you notice that after this, he picks up the cat's paw dagger, right? My question is, okay, he's clearly sheathing his sword, and which made me think, he's like, I'm not going to kill Aegon, he's doomed, or he's not going to have any more kids, or whatever. Whatever he's thinking, he's as good as done, I'm going to rule, okay? I don't need to fully kill him. I had a second thought, though, is that he sees the cat's paw dagger there in that moment. So was he sheathing his sword because he thought it would be a more meaningful death if he killed him with the cat's paw dagger? Because he sees that on the ground right after, like, in that moment. And that would be an explanation for why he would sheath it.
I can't say it's impossible, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that it's true either. You know what I mean? Like, it's certainly possible. But, because you would wonder, why does he even have his sword out in the first place? There should not be any foes around. There's no enemies. There's no enemies outside the castle.
That's why I think he would have it out, because he was going to put them out of their misery, or take them out to clear the way for him. Either interpretation, kind of different, kind of the same, but a little shades of difference.
Yeah, so it is a little open to interpretation. So, like, what I mean when I say that our initial impression was wrong, all I mean is that he definitely wasn't about to stab him with the sword. That doesn't mean his intent wasn't to kill him, or that he had, like Ashaya said, maybe he just was like, I'll just use this dagger instead.
My next point for y'all here is that whether he was thinking he'd kill him with the dagger instead or not, we know Aemond knows Valyrian well. We know the prophecy is on this dagger written. We know this blade is very hot right now. If he could read it, he might be reading it right now. He might read the prophecy and know the prophecy as of now.
And if he isn't right now, he might later. Yeah. And of course, the prophecy is incomplete. It does not have the whole thing on there. There's just like one line of it. So who knows what that could mean? If he just reads this one line, maybe it throws him off in an entirely different direction. Maybe it encourages him to read more. I don't know. What do you think, Sean, about
We love the idea of reading more.
Valar, reread us.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you mean by about. Was he about to kill him? Was he about to kill him in the next 1 or 2 seconds? Definitely not. No chance. He was, I don't know, several steps away from Aegon's body, and he was lifting it up to sheath it before Cole called his name. Like, he because I said, we thought on first watch the same thing.
He's sheathing it. He's sheathing it with another weapon right in front of him.
Exactly. He might have been sheathing it just so that he could bend down and pick up the other weapon. Whether or not he meant to use that weapon to kill him also might be a question. But it is weird that he had it out in the first place. Maybe he's being cautious. It's a chaotic battlefield situation. Who knows what could happen out there? But it is weird that he had his sword out in the first place.
Yeah, that's very telling. The fact that his sword is out is all.
But I'm confident that he wasn't a quote unquote about to kill Aegon.
I agree,
like in that stroke or in that second. But he might have been about to kill him like in the next few moments,
and
depending
again,
on what he saw or whatever.
And that kill, y'all, like it might have been a mercy kill. Like if he was coming up to him being like, like this dragon and this, like he might have been about to kill Sunfire, right? And Aegon. Like the idea, yes, it could be for his benefit, but it also might be like no one should live through this. They're dying. They're in pain. Like it isn't, and it can be both. It can be both.
Absolutely.
Maybe in modern times when you could like medevac someone on a helicopter to the highest quality, but they're just in the middle of the freaking woods.
Well, no, they're going to take him into Rook's Rest. Clearly, that's where they're going to get the Rook's Rest Maester. That's his job now. Then they'll maybe go back to King's Landing, but the nearest Maester is going to be conscripted into this role, and that's the guy inside Rook's Rest, unless he somehow died, which isn't likely. But
I will say that I waffle on whether or not I want to watch the next week on little preview. Because sometimes it can be a little, usually they're vague enough with it that it's not that spoilery. You know what I mean? But I kind of want to be in limbo enough to not, but this time I did. And they made it pretty clear that Aegon is not dead, at least not dead yet in that preview. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't have even said that just now. There are people out there to watch the next week on, but I can't decide if I'm disappointed to know that or not. Because I think I would have guessed he's still alive because they didn't make it more clear that he's dead. Does that make sense?
Why else have the ambiguity? Yeah, like that. Everything. Right. There's two main ambiguous things there. What Aemon's intent was, and like who's alive, because it's also the dragon and the king there.
Like the dragon was still breathing, and I slow-mo pause, play, trying to. There's just like 1 second of barely seeing the image of him, and it's not clear if he's moving or breathing or anything. It's hard to say. And so I think if they wanted him to be dead, they would have made it clear to us that he was dead. So it makes me guess he's not dead yet, at least. So
and having the uncertainty you can see why that would heighten the conflict even more, or make some new plot threads possible.
And him being, even if he's not dead, he's not about to like jump up and run into battle. He's probably He's probably burned and broke back, and whoever knows, concussions, unconscious, coma,
all sorts of.
Can he speak or
potential health problems?
So he might become like Grover Tully, right?
Oh, sure.
Someone else, Aemond, is probably effectively going to rule in his place.
Yep, he's becoming more like his father than he wanted to be in a lot younger age, if that's indeed how it goes.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, think about the possibility that he could be wearing that mask of his father's face mask to cover his burns or something like that. All sorts of little, maybe walking with his cane. I made that guess a while ago. We'll see if it comes true. It's not in the book. I'll say that. Just a guess that I have for the future of the show. So yeah, as we discussed. Can they call this a victory? How they spin this? How people will react? So many reactions are going to come. Blacks, greens, regular folk, people in between. Wow, yeah, a lot. It's going to drive the rest of the season, among other things, and we're looking forward to that. R.I.P. Rhaenys. Rhaenys in world was born on the 7th day of the 7th month. The episode aired on the 7th day of the 7th month. What the hell? What kind of crazy coincidence is that? There's obviously no way they planned that. They couldn't have, we got to put it on Rhaenys' canon birthday. We got to make sure that happens. No way to do that. So we will miss Eve Best. What a great performance. She had a great, interview take on, you don't want to die, but if you're going to die, it may as well be on the biggest, on a big bad dragon in one of the biggest battles of all time. It's like, if you're going to go, that's the way to go. Yep. That's a great take. Just like her takes in life, it's a great take in death. And I hope to see Eve Best in other shows. And hey, maybe she'll be in a dream sequence or something. At least we know those are happening in the show. So it could happen, it's one thing to hope for a dream sequence in a show that doesn't have those, but hey, they've shown it's a thing, so maybe we'll get it. Anyway, it's an all-timer of an episode. It's going to be interesting to see how this one sits in the all-timer battles category when people do their ratings of the best Game of Thrones battles of all time and things like that. This one will certainly be in the discussion. I'm sure it's not everyone's favorite.
Where do you guys put it?
I don't know yet. I always have a hard time picking favorites, so it's difficult. But I do. It's up there. I think I think I probably like it more than any of the Game of Thrones battles because dragon battles are just so cool. And I never felt so much tension over something that I pretty much knew what was going to happen in. And that's really hard to do. And I've heard that from a lot of people. A lot of people have been like, yeah, I knew pretty much exactly what was going to happen. And it was still riveting and made me still on the edge of my seat and still had me gripping my chair and
had me yelling,
tearing up and yelling.
Yelping.
Yeah, we were yelling and screaming at the
I felt my heart just pounding multiple times. I was anxious and physically, alert and pumped up. Yeah. I think I'm going to put it top 3. Pretty sure Hard Home is my favorite.
That's a good one.
And after that, I don't like Battle of the Bastards as much as some other people did. I didn't like the Battle of the Wall, maybe Blackwater Bay. All those like, yeah, I guess. Hardhome is my definitive favorite. After that, I'm not sure.
Blackwater's so good because of all the POVs involved and how
exactly.
well
The battle itself is not as good as the dialogue between like when like one of my favorite moments of all of Game of Thrones is when the ships have been blown up and Stannis is like, let's go anyway. And one of his lieutenants is like, hundreds of men will die. And he's like, thousands.
Yeah.
Like
facts.
One of my favorite moments of the whole show. But it wasn't exactly battle, I guess. I don't know. It was Blackwater was kind of split up. The battle and other stuff was split up a lot, but
I'll say this is my favorite.
Down. I'm going to say this is number 2 for me after Hardhome.
Yeah, it's my favorite battle by a long shot. I don't think any of the Game of Thrones battles for me have ever hit as hard as this battle hit, and it goes down to the sound design and the dragons and like the production team for that. Not like the performances, the writing, the actors, all of that, but it really, I think, like the sounds of the dragons being just killed and the shrieking and all and just whatever the sound design team did, whatever they sampled, it really cut to the core of a lot of people's hearts, I think, and made us really hurt for them. Even though, again, I am team small folk, so I really should be anti-dragon, and I kind of am. Like, a logical part of me is like, yeah, the dragons should all die. If people are going to use them like this, they should be gone. But yet, despite that, I was so upset in this moment for Sunfire and Meleys. I was just heartbroken, utterly and completely heartbroken. So I don't think any battle in Game of Thrones has left me feeling as heartbroken and as yelling as much. And yeah, other moments in Game of Thrones have left me feeling as upset and crying, but not one of the battle sequences.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I think if it makes you like something just going against your values, that really says something. They really did a good job. Like, if they can convince you to feel bad for these dragons, or for me to feel bad for Aegon, who I acknowledge is a terrible person. It's like, well, they've really pulled something off. If you've feeling sympathy for someone you don't usually feel sympathy for, feeling sympathy for violent, deadly animals that are used to tyrannize people. Yeah, it's an accomplishment to pull that off. Not to mention just the visual spectacle of it all. Mick Floyd sends a super chat, says, I think Cole thought he was going to kill him. That scream said it all. Yeah, he was like, Aemond. Yeah, like it wasn't a, hey, Aemond, yo. it was a hey.
Stop.
It did have a hey, stop kind of vibe to it.
You're right. I think whatever Aemond's intentions were, I think we know what Cole thought of him in that moment. And again, makes me wonder how much we don't see Cole's reaction to if he looked up in the moment and saw the Vhagar, Meleys, Sunfire deal. We don't know what people saw. We don't know what Cole saw. I think based on honestly, like when you're that far away and the way like depth perception works, I don't know that it would be damning. Like, I don't know that from the ground it looked obviously like he took out Sunfire, but it might have. Cole might know that he did that. He
also has why didn't he come when the signal was called? He saw his brother and was late. Like, that's evidence for him thinking he's going to kill him. Like, from Cole's perspective, that's sketchy. Like, oh, is he going to kill his brother here? So yeah, I can see that. So clearly they made it ambiguous because we aren't sure. We can see both sides of it. Like, that's the answer. They deliberately made it confusing. Like, we're not supposed to know, I think, but it's fun to talk about. So, but yeah, I don't think we're supposed to be able to figure it out purely from what happened. I think that maybe will come later when we see how Aemond's reaction is and what else happens next. And well, we're halfway through the season. There's been a lot so far. It's been great. We'll have a lot more to talk about, a lot more topics to cover, and not to mention more episodes to cover. So stay with us, friends. We are having a fun time. I hope you are too. We'll keep the discussions coming, keep our notes flowing, try to keep track of all these details, all these takes, all these topics. And thanks to Brand the Builder for our awesome video intro. We sure do like that. Don't forget to check out the link in the description about City Winery if you're in the New York area. We would love to see you on August 3rd for the episode 8 preview / recap of the season. And we will see you all soon for the next episode. Oh, Sean, you have something to add?
Just one last quip. Sure. However old Alys Rivers might be, I think she's a voodoo child.
Hey, there it is. There's that Jimi Hendrix. You got it in. You snuck it in right under the wire. Well played, my friend. All right, everybody. Until next time, Valar Rhaenys.